June pondered for a moment and spoke. I suggest that you cut to the chase. It would be best to directly tell Michaela about your identity. If this continues, things will become more and more troublesome. Harry thought for a moment and nodded. Yes. Yes, I was thinking too much before. I was afraid that Michaela would not recognize me as her brother after my identity was revealed. Now it seems that I should do as you say. Harry listened to June's suggestion and felt that there was no need to overthink the issue. Harry couldn't stand watching his sister suffer. He was full of anger, but had to remain calm for the moment. Harry and Michaela were related. Even if Michaela didn't know it, he would still treat her like his sister. Now it seemed that it was finally time for him to reveal his identity to his sister. Harry said to June, I hear you. When Michaela comes home after school today, I'll tell her my identity. Regardless of whether she'll accept me as her brother, I'll make sure she doesn't have to suffer living with her awful family. Harry's mood improved when he spoke. He asked June, what if I break the ice with a gift? June and Michaela were both girls, so Harry felt that he should ask June for some advice. It was true that June was a girl, but her life wasn't the same as an ordinary girl's. She trained hard in her free time, and the rest of her time she spent protecting Harry. She couldn't give any good suggestions on what a girl might like. Harry had asked the wrong woman. I don't think I'm the right person to ask, June said with difficulty. Without June's help, Harry couldn't make up his mind. He soon realized that everyone around him couldn't help him find the perfect gift. Harry sighed. Why don't we buy her some nice clothes and jewelry? June tried to suggest. I can't think of anything better, Harry said hopelessly. June's idea was good, but it had its flaws. Harry didn't know what kind of clothes and jewelry Michaela might like. He only ever saw her in her school uniform. Stay here. I'll get someone to buy a nice gift, June said. Harry shook his head. No, I want to find the gift myself. Prepare a car for me. I want to go to the mall downtown. Yes, sir. In the new city district, high-end shopping malls and luxury shops were all over the place. However, Harry was actually not very satisfied with what they sold. Harry thought the items in the shops were too low quality. He could only get the best for his sister. He wanted to fly to other places to buy things, but he was also worried that the trip would be too far and he wouldn't be able to make it back in time, so he decided to stay in the city for now. When Michaela went back to live with him, he would give his sister an even bigger gift. Harry couldn't wait to tell Michaela they were brother and sister. Harry had been uncomfortable keeping his identity a secret from her. He sat in the car while his guards drove him to the busiest shopping mall in the city. Looking at the bustling crowds on the street and the endless stream of customers in the shops, Harry was a little displeased. He wanted to take his time finding the perfect gift for Michaela. All these people crowding around every store would make that difficult. Mountain City was a tourist destination, and people would come from all around the world. They were looking for souvenirs to remember their trip. Harry had never been a pretentious person. He could blend in with any kind of crowd. But today was different. He wanted peace and quiet. On the way, he saw a luxury store. Harry said, Stop the car. Let's go here first. June, clear the store for me. Yes, sir. June wouldn't be surprised by any of Harry's orders. She would only follow them. No matter how strange Harry's actions were, she wouldn't ask why he did it. June was the first to walk out of the car and towards the shop. Harry continued to sit in the car and wait. The store was named Audrey and was one of the top designer brands. It was also the most high-end brand in Mountain City. The store looked very grand. The outside mimicked a palace and the inside was like stepping into a ballroom. Everything in the store was very expensive. The lowest price of any item was around $10,000. New products were priced at tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. A luxury store such as this never had a lot of people in them. Their clientele was the top 1% in the world. Harry wanted to be alone when he was looking for a gift. The store only had a few customers that were looking at or trying on some products. Harry's motorcade of luxury vehicles attracted a lot of attention. Luxury cars weren't rare in Mountain City, but people rarely saw a whole fleet of them on the road at one time. The customers in the store thought that there was something going on. They all looked at the shop manager in surprise. What's going on? An employee said. The staff in Audrey's shop were dumbfounded. I don't know. I imagine the owner would inform us if anything was happening. While everyone was surprised, June walked into the shop. When the shop assistant saw her, she greeted her warmly. Excuse me, miss. Welcome to Audrey. Is there anything I can help you with? The staff was trained to greet their wealthy customers, to make their shopping experience more enjoyable. They saw June step out of the luxury car, and she carried herself well. It was obvious to the employees that she was a very wealthy individual. The women that had been in the store or on the street paled in comparison to June's beauty. This immediately made her more important in the eyes of the employees. If they could make June happy, then she might want to buy more than she initially intended. June knew she had to play her part to gain the respect of everyone around her. She looked at the other customers and employees with a sense of superiority. June could see that all the women in the store were pretty, but they had caked on their makeup to do so. June was naturally beautiful and never wore makeup. She thought it was funny that these women would try so hard when all she had to do was brush her hair. She smiled slightly. In an instant, everyone in the store thought that June was the young mistress of a super rich man. They began to second guess this idea when they saw what June had been wearing. She was wearing slack pants and a fitting top. Normally, a woman would be in a more extravagant outfit when they went shopping. This made the other customers wonder who June was and if she actually belonged in the store. June looked out of place in the decorated room with all the designer clothes lining the wall, but very quickly, everyone understood. June wasn't some young mistress. She was actually a guard for some wealthy individual. Everyone in the store was dumbfounded at the idea of having such a beautiful woman as a bodyguard. My employer wants to come here to buy a gift. I want this building cleared so he can shop in peace. June's words stunned everyone on the spot. What do you mean, clear the building? A blonde woman said. Some customers were unhappy. They didn't think they had to listen to June's demands. I think she said her boss wants to come in here, a man in a woman's designer store. Now that has to be a joke. The blonde continued. I'm a VIP member here, you can't boss me around, an older woman said. All the customers were dissatisfied. When the shop assistant saw that the customers were about to start yelling at June, she could only smile and do her best to diffuse the tense situation. The store manager knew that if any of their customers were angry enough, they might never return, or worse, try to run their store into the ground. The clerk carefully advised, Madam, I'm sorry. This is a store, not a private club. We don't have the right to ask any customer to leave. Besides, all the customers here are our members. The manager was in a very difficult position. She didn't want to upset any of her customers, and June also seemed like a woman she didn't want to offend. However, June wouldn't back down. Since Harry requested for the store to be cleared, she had to make sure that not a single person was left inside, except for the staff. June shook her head. I said the store should be cleared. Don't make me escort you out. As she spoke, she raised her hand and waved. A large group of the Wolf Guard walked out from the cars in front of the store. Each of them looked extremely ferocious. They were all tall and imposing in their matching black suits and sunglasses. The customers didn't imagine that June was serious until the men came in and started ushering them out of the store. They were gentle but used force when necessary. My husband is a senior executive of the Tailspin Corporation. If you dare to touch me, he'll make sure you never work again, the blonde said. I'm the wife of the chairman of the Jewel Group. He'll send people to beat you bloody, the old woman said. The customers were frightened and quickly revealed who their husbands were, hoping that June would stop or face their wrath. But these people clearly didn't understand that June didn't care who these women were. She was under orders. She knew Harry was above all others. It didn't matter who these women were married to. As Harry's guard, June wasn't threatened by these vapid women. She sneered. June said, I'll give you half a minute to pack up and get out of the store. Otherwise, I'll have my men carry you out. June gave them an ultimatum they couldn't refuse. The women started to call their husbands. They wanted to show June that they weren't women to be messed with. But this time, Harry was going to be unreasonable. He didn't care what other people would think. June loyally carried out Harry's orders. Seeing that these people still refused to leave, she asked the Wolf Guard to force them out of the store. The group of customers were all pampered ladies. They didn't dare to make a move against the Wolf Guard. They packed up their items and left the store while cursing under their breath. The employees in Audrey's shop were at a loss. They didn't want to get in June's way either. They just kept apologizing to the customers who were being forced to leave. They hoped that these people wouldn't take their anger out on their shop after this unpleasant shopping experience. Harry got out of the car and walked into the store when it was cleared. The staff of Audrey finally saw this mysterious young man June had been talking about. They thought that this was some kind of joke. June commanded a lot of respect from others and looked like she belonged in high society. Harry looked nothing like the rich clientele they were used to catering to, because he had come here on a whim. Harry was still wearing his old tattered clothes that he bought to disguise himself as a construction worker. This was unbelievable. He was sitting in a luxury car worth more than $10 million, and he was accompanied by a convoy of guards. They thought Harry was just some poor man that June was using to play a prank on the employees. The staff looked at each other in dismay. All of them were stunned. They really couldn't understand what was going on. Harry didn't care what the employees thought of him or his people. He was only here to buy a nice gift for his sister. Harry knew his worth and had always hated the superiority some people had over others. He would be content walking into any venue dressed in clothes he got off of a clearance rack. When the Audrey's store manager saw that her employees were avoiding Harry, she decided to be courteous to him. "Sir, are you looking for anything in particular?" the manager asked carefully. Harry hated buying gifts for girls. He was also confused when he entered the store and saw all kinds of items. Fortunately, someone finally came to greet him. Harry said, "I want to buy something for my sister, but I don't know what she would like best." The manager asked softly, "How old is your sister?" 17. She's still in high school, but she's about to take her college entrance exams. What do you think she'll like?" Harry asked. The manager had been in this line of work for many years. She had met all kinds of people and had gathered a lot of knowledge on what people might like best. "Sir, let me show you. These items should be what you are looking for." Harry followed the manager's lead and went to the second floor of the store. Everything on the second floor was more stereotypically girly, being pink and with lots of frills. Harry remembered he had another problem. He had no idea what Michaela's dress size was. Looking at June beside him, Harry thought for a while and asked, "June, you're about the same size as Michaela, am I right?" June's face turned slightly red as she said, "That's mostly correct. When we examined her at the school, I got all of her measurements. I'll need you to help me find the right size clothes. Then I guess I'll buy it in terms of size." Harry rubbed his nose and said. June looked at the display cabinets around her and asked, "This isn't a problem, but which one do you want to buy?" Harry waved his hand. "Doesn't matter. As long as it is the right size, I'll buy it all." The other employees gathered around to see what Harry was trying to buy. When the other customers were pushed out, they had nothing else to do. They wanted to eavesdrop on Harry and June while they pretended to sort items. When they saw that Harry only waved his hand and was about to buy all the clothes at their shop, they could only sigh in admiration. This was the first time they had seen someone as rich as Harry, who just bought whatever he wanted on a whim. The employees never thought they would see someone come into their store and just haphazardly buy a closet's worth of clothing. The manager stammered in surprise. "Sir, you really want to buy all of this?" "Well, only if they are the right size. Everything in the store, including shoes, belts, hats, and so on." "Oh, right. I'll buy all the bags too." Harry nodded and said. Harry looked indifferent to the amount of money he was spending. The store manager scanned all the items Harry had gathered and saw the total for it all was a little over $10 million. The store was littered with sections that looked completely barren. "Sir, are you using cash or card?" The store manager's voice started to tremble. The manager was ecstatic to know that this purchase would look really good on her quarterly report. Selling their seasonal inventory would mean a huge bonus for her and some of the other staff. She also knew that she would be able to get a commission for this purchase, and she couldn't help but smile. The manager began dreaming about being promoted to an executive position where she could make more money. "I'll be using my card. I don't usually keep $10 million in cash on me," Harry said. Sorting everything into their respective bags so they wouldn't be damaged on their way out of the store took roughly an hour. Harry was bored waiting for all of his items to be packaged, and noticed the store was also selling plush toys that their store used as mascots to sell certain products. Harry thought that Michaela would love these as well, and bought all the store had in stock. The manager called one of their trucks to carry all of Harry's items for him. There was no way he could have put everything in all the cars he brought with him to the store. When Harry left, everyone in the store was gossiping. They were all guessing where Harry got all his money from. Most of them were jealous of Harry's sister. She was lucky to have a brother that was happy to spend millions of dollars on her. After spending the whole day shopping, Harry finally returned to the neighborhood. He ordered his men to drop all the gifts into the house he was staying at. All Harry had to do was wait for Michaela to come home from school and then tell her who he really was. Harry knew she would be out of school in about an hour. Every minute seemed to pass by slower and slower. He paced back and forth in the room, unable to calm down. When the time finally came, Harry excitedly stood on the balcony and looked at the road that led to the entrance of the neighborhood. Harry waited, looking at everyone that passed by. Minutes went by and he didn't see Michaela. This made Harry feel even more anxious. What's going on? Why isn't she back yet? Harry muttered to himself. Maybe she got caught up in her studies at school. Just be patient, June comforted him. At that moment, someone knocked on his front door. Harry, I know you are inside. Hurry up and come out. Howie's arrogant voice could be heard. You should leave, Harry said to June, then walked over to open the door. What do you want now? Harry said coldly. Howie didn't care about Harry's threat at all. He questioned, Is Michaela here with you? Harry realized something was wrong. Howie wasn't the only one standing outside the door. His parents were also glaring at Harry. What frightened Harry even more was that Howie came to see him with his parents. What did you say? Harry had a bad premonition. Stop playing dumb. I think Michaela didn't even attend her late-night self-study class today. Is she here with you? Michaela's mother asked with a cold face. Michaela's stepfather stretched his neck and looked over Harry's shoulder into the house. Harry's heart skipped a beat. He thought to himself, no wonder I was feeling uneasy today. My sister has gone missing. Please don't let anything happen to her. He pulled Howie by the collar and shouted, What exactly happened? Why didn't she go to class? Harry wasn't afraid of Howie's parents. Howie struggled to free himself from Harry's hand and pointed at Harry's nose. You were the last one to see her. You have to know where she is. Harry was annoyed by Howie's attitude and slapped him across the face. Howie's head was spinning from the slap and he fell to the ground feeling incredibly dizzy. Howie's parents were shocked. When they realized Harry hit their son, Howie was already on the ground. They became furious and started screaming at Harry. How dare you hit my son? We know you've been trying to date our daughter. Howie told us everything and we don't approve at all, Michaela's mother said sternly. Harry frowned. It's not what you think. I've no idea where Michaela is. We have to find her. Stop playing. We know she is here. Get out of the way, Michaela's stepfather said. Harry's patience towards this family had already reached its limit, but now wasn't the time to get angry with them. Michaela didn't come home from school, and Harry didn't know what had happened to her. He had to find her before she could be harmed. Michaela's stepfather saw Harry blocking the door and didn't move. He thought that Harry was feeling guilty and kidnapped Michaela. He sneered and said, She must be here. Let us in or we'll force our way in. As he spoke, he wanted to push Harry out of the doorway. Harry was adamant about keeping these people out of the house he was renting. Harry saw the punch coming towards him and dodged out of the way. Without thinking, he countered. June heard the commotion at the door and came running from the other room. She whispered into Harry's ear, Sir, we can't waste time. We have to find Michaela. June wasn't worried about Michaela's family knowing that Harry wasn't who he said he was. Michaela's mother saw June and her eyes opened wide. Howie and his father were on the ground and looked at June with dumbfounded expressions. They thought Michaela was the only other person in the house. Because he was worried about Michaela's safety, Harry didn't want to waste any more time with these three people. He brought June along and prepared to go out to find Michaela. Before Harry could do anything else, he needed to look for clues about where she might have gone. He stretched out his hand and pulled Howie up from the ground. He stared at him coldly and asked, Tell me, why would Michaela run away? Don't lie to me or I'll beat you to death right now, Howie said. How would I know? She said she didn't want anything to do with me. I only told her that Mom and Dad had arranged for her to be married to some rich guy. What did you say? Harry's stomach was about to explode from anger. He had heard about this from Michaela last night, but Harry didn't expect her family to move so quickly. Harry understood why Michaela disappeared. She hated her family with every fiber of her being. Now that she was forced into a marriage she didn't want, she had no choice but to run away. Harry punched Howie's face. His parents were shocked that Harry would hit their son again. They stretched out their hands and were about to attack Harry. Harry stopped June from protecting him because he wanted to fight them alone. He swung his arm and stopped Michaela's mother. Then he punched Howie's father in the stomach. I am going to find Michaela now. You guys better pray that she comes back safe and sound. Otherwise, I'll make sure to bury you all in a shallow grave. When they were all on the ground, Harry looked at June and signaled that they should leave. At this time, a young man ran up from downstairs. He wore a designer suit and a pair of gold-rimmed glasses on his face. His hair was neat and tidy, and he looked gentle and elegant. He asked anxiously, What's going on? What happened? Howie pointed at Harry with snot and tears and said with all the rage he could muster, Muller, this guy kidnapped Michaela. We just wanted to know if Michaela was safe and he attacked us. Harry sneered and didn't argue. He took June and continued down the stairs. Stop right there. Muller stopped Harry with a cold expression. First, he raised his head and looked at Harry from head to toe. Then he saw June standing behind him. The moment he saw June, his eyes flashed with envy. Did you take Michaela? Muller asked. Harry said impatiently. Who are you? Howie gathered some strength and said, This is Muller. His family is wealthy and owns a big corporation. He is the guy who is going to marry Michaela. Harry was annoyed by Howie and thought he should have hit him harder. Harry took out a coin from his pocket and flicked it at Howie's head. The coin flew at an incredible speed right into Howie's front teeth. Howie was whimpering on the ground while his mother tried to comfort him. Muller furrowed his brow. He looked at Harry once again and asked, That is going to be my brother-in-law. Who do you think you are? I don't have to answer you. He was annoying me, so I dealt with the problem, Harry said with a sneer. Muller was shocked that Harry wasn't afraid of him. Muller's family was big, but their influence wasn't worldwide. However, no one would insult the Muller family in Mountain City. In Mountain City, there were only a handful of families that were as powerful as the Muller family. I heard that you are a construction worker. I don't blame you for not knowing who I am, but you have to hand Michaela over to me, Muller said in a gloomy tone. As soon as he finished speaking, a group of bodyguards rushed up from downstairs. Harry was already furious about being stopped time and time again. He had to go find Michaela, but her family was convinced that he was hiding Michaela from them. Harry looked at the men at the bottom of the stairs and scowled. Are you crazy? I'm going to find Michaela. I don't have time to waste with you guys. If you don't get out of my way right now, I'll make sure you all wake up in the hospital tomorrow, Harry said angrily. June leaped into action. June knew from all her hours with Harry that he was subtly telling her to attack. Muller brought a lot of men with him that were acting aggressively. June wasn't worried. She thought they would be easy to deal with. Her only problem was that there were so many of them. However, in a narrow place like the stairwell, she could use the cramped space to her advantage. Harry didn't need to lift a finger. June was fine fighting by herself. She needed all the room she could get to dodge their punches. Muller and his bodyguards were too slow to react. The men were falling one by one. Before the people in the back could figure out what was going on, June had leaped over their friends. In a moment, all the guards were on the ground groaning in pain. Harry stood in front of Muller and looked straight at him. You should have brought more men. Muller looked at Harry in shock and asked, Who are you? Do you want to guess? Harry replied with a mysterious smile. He took June down the stairs. After a few steps, he stopped and turned around. Oh, before I forget, you'll never be Michaela's fiancé. After saying that, Harry walked away. Muller clenched his fists. He looked at the bodyguards on the floor and cursed. You are all trash. It was one woman. The bodyguards lay on the ground in pain and didn't dare to argue. Howie ignored the pain he felt from his teeth being knocked out and stood up. He asked with concern, What happened? Muller, are you all right? Are you hurt? Muller shook his head and asked, Who was that guy? Howie said with a bitter face, Muller, I really don't know. A few days ago, he appeared in the neighborhood for no reason and then moved into the house opposite mine. I thought he was just some creepy construction worker. Muller shook his head slightly. That doesn't make any sense. Howie tried to say, He's been friendly towards Michaela and I heard them discussing running away together. Muller still shook his head and said, I don't think he took Michaela. He seemed about as anxious as us when you told him that she had gone missing. Then where did Michaela go? Howie asked. His parents said, Muller, you have to find her. Michaela's mother and stepfather looked heartbroken. They acted like they were concerned with Michaela's well-being. They were just worried that Muller would retract his proposal and they wouldn't get his $5 million betrothal gift. Muller said with a solemn expression, Auntie, Uncle, don't worry. I'll send all of my men to look for Michaela now. Why don't you all come with me? If we find Michaela, it'll save you guys from worrying, right? Muller invited them. He didn't really care about Michaela's parents, but he was humiliated by Harry and he wanted to try and look tough. Muller was worried about finding Michaela. He didn't have time to go after Harry and take his revenge. He needed to find Michaela as fast as possible. Under Muller's invitation, Howie and his parents sat in his luxury car. His car was custom-made from the factory exactly as Muller had wanted. The total price of the car was in the millions, and he spared no expense. Howie had never dreamed that he would be able to sit in such an expensive and luxurious car. It was a very novel experience. For a moment, he had forgotten that his two front teeth had just been knocked out and were still bleeding. A small trickle of blood leaked from the corner of Howie's mouth and fell onto the custom leather seats. Muller saw the mess Howie was making, and he could barely contain his anger. Howie's mother saw the rage in his eyes. Muller, I'm really sorry. Why are you so careless, Howie? Howie's mother apologized on behalf of her son. Howie's mother knew very well about the contempt in Muller's eyes, but she didn't want to make him any angrier. She had to play her role as the forgiving mother and do everything to appease Muller. Muller was seething with anger, but he knew that the arranged marriage wouldn't happen if Michaela's parents hated him. Muller straightened his expression and pretended to be concerned. Howie, having your teeth knocked out is pretty serious. I think it's better to take you to the hospital first. Howie finally felt the pain from his missing teeth, but he still breathed in and said, No, it's nothing. The most important thing is that we find Michaela. I just lost 2 teeth. I can always get new ones. Howie was only interested in the money that Muller was going to pay his family after he and Michaela were married. Howie began to think of getting gold teeth. The thought made him giggle. His mother slapped him on the head for not behaving himself. Child, you've been beaten silly. Why are you laughing? Howie's father also covered his stomach and said in pain, That man thinks he owns the world, sending that girl to beat Muller's men up. Muller, you must go after him. Howie's parents were fanning the flames. Muller knew that they were counting on him to vent their anger. He felt even more contempt in his heart. These kinds of people were the scum of the world. All they could do was scream and cry, hoping someone else would take care of their problems. Muller was barely willing to do anything for these horrible people. The only reason he would ever entertain these people was to get their daughter to be his bride. Her parents were nothing more than a couple of normal, underwhelming individuals. He didn't choose them because of their defining characteristics. It was by chance that they met. Muller was visiting the town and accidentally ran into Michaela. He was infatuated the moment he saw her. After sending his people to inquire about Michaela and her family, Muller was pleasantly surprised to find out that her parents were arranging a marriage for Michaela. Muller was overjoyed. When he proposed himself to Michaela's parents, he offered a large sum of money, which they happily agreed to. Muller was sure the $5 million gift was enough to stop her parents from looking for any other suitors. This made Michaela's parents extremely happy. Never in their wildest dreams would they've thought that such a rich man would come into their lives. Their family hadn't been wealthy and were living paycheck to paycheck. The money they would receive from the proposal was enough to pay off their debts and start living a more luxurious life. Muller was a man of his word, and once the marriage was final, he would transfer her parents the $5 million. The 3 of them had long been blinded by money and were waiting for Michaela to come home and announce that Muller would be her new husband. They never imagined that she would run away. If they didn't find her, the $5 million would be gone. The only thing they cared about was that money, and they would do anything to get it. Once Muller and Michaela were married and they received the money, they wouldn't care what happened to Michaela. She would be Muller's problem. Michaela was nothing more than an object to be traded to them. Muller was well aware of their behavior. Michaela's family wanted money. Muller wanted Michaela. Muller knew that Michaela's parents didn't care for her, and neither did he. He didn't love Michaela. He only thought she was beautiful, and he wanted her all to himself. Michaela's family chattered loudly as Muller drove through the city. Harry, who had left earlier, gathered all his subordinates who had been brought to the mountain city and ordered them to investigate Michaela's whereabouts. Harry knew that his people were the best in the business when it came to fighting. He also knew that they were ill-suited for this kind of work. Michaela left without a trace, and there wasn't even a single person who knew about where she went or who she went with. Harry found the school and asked Michaela's teachers, classmates, and the security guards at the entrance. Not a single one of them was sure where she went. Michaela's friends didn't even know. They only knew that Michaela had been at school and came to the late-night study session and left without telling anyone. The school security reported that no one had left through the front door. This left 2 possibilities. Either Michaela was hiding somewhere in the school, or she decided to climb over the wall around the school. She didn't pass through the school's main entrance. Therefore, Harry divided his subordinates into 2 groups. One group went to search the school while the other group searched around the school. Harry thought to expand his search area, and the only one that could do it was Stephen. Stephen had previously shown his ability to find people through the internet. This time, Harry had to use him to find Michaela. Harry immediately called Stephen. Although it was late at night, Stephen was usually up and working on some projects. Sure enough, the phone only rang twice before Stephen picked it up. Boss, are you looking for me? I'm looking for a young girl. It's a very urgent matter. I need you to find her. Check up all the surveillance cameras in the vicinity of the Mountain City High School. Harry told Stephen the details of the situation and sent him everything he had, and then shared the location he needed to start his search. Stephen was good. In less than 5 minutes, he returned the information to Harry. Through the security system in the school and the surveillance system on the streets near the school, he found Michaela on one camera facing the street behind the school. Through the surveillance records that Stephen had intercepted, Harry saw that Michaela had climbed over the wall of the school sports field and left alone at around 9 o'clock in the night. When she arrived at the street, Michaela looked around blankly. Harry could feel Michaela's mood at that time. Her family had forced her to marry a strange man that she had never met. She had no choice but to run away. However, she couldn't return to her home after leaving school, so there was no other place for her to go. She walked alone on the street. Michaela didn't seem to be sure where she was going, but the next second, Harry's heart tightened. A passing white van drove from behind Michaela and gradually slowed down until it stopped. At this time, Michaela didn't notice anything unusual until the van slowly caught up with her. Suddenly, 5 or 6 men got out of the van and surrounded Michaela, forcefully pulling her into the van. The door of the van closed swiftly and they drove away quickly. Harry's eyelids twitched as he watched the video from the surveillance camera. His entire body was trembling with anger. Michaela was on an empty street late at night, leaving no witnesses. What made Harry even more frightened was that it had been almost 2 hours since Michaela was taken away. Harry shook his head and suppressed the terrifying thoughts in his heart. Now wasn't the time to think about the worst outcome. He had to stay positive and do anything he could to save her. The most important thing right now was to find out where Michaela went. Because of the angle of the camera and the low quality of the video, Harry couldn't see clearly who took Michaela away. There was only a blurry face in the video. However, the color and license plate of the van was easy enough to see. "This is the van. Hurry up and find out where it went," Harry anxiously said to Stephen. Stephen answered on the phone. "Don't worry, I'm already checking." Compared to finding people, finding a car was much easier. There were cameras all over that could be used to watch for a particular car and would narrow down their search significantly. As long as Stephen hacked into the road system and entered the plate number, he would be able to find the direction of the vehicle immediately. Although this was slower, it was more effective at giving an accurate location. However, what Harry wanted now was speed. He was racing against time. If he found Michaela sooner, the possibility of her getting hurt would be much lower. Furthermore, when he looked at the surveillance camera earlier, Harry thought that this kidnapping wasn't planned. Michaela just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Therefore, Harry didn't think that the group in the van would have thought to change vehicles. Very quickly, Stephen located a rough area where the van could be. Harry hurriedly ordered his subordinates to rush over and kept in contact with Stephen along the way, trying to find out if there were any surveillance cameras in the area. Unfortunately, this van was heading to a rural area on the outskirts of the city. There were no surveillance cameras out that far. Therefore, Harry couldn't know which house Michaela had been brought to. Fortunately, this town wasn't big. There were less than 100 households in total. Harry called for one of his bionic dogs to be brought on the search. The bionic dog was perfect for this kind of problem. It had many features that made it ideal for searching a person. Its nose was one of those features. It mimicked a dog's sensitive sense of smell, allowing them to track and search, but had been modified to be 100 times better. Under Harry's urging, the motorcade drove to the outskirts of the city in search of Michaela. When they arrived at their destination, they found that this town was indeed very remote. The town in front of them was very old and run down, and there were no streetlights along the road. The only light was the occasional lamp in a window in some of the houses. Many of the houses were far apart with many open spaces between them. Searching door to door would expose Harry and his men, and Michaela's kidnappers might notice them. They had to sneak into the town to avoid being seen. Harry took the bionic dog and was prepared to lead the search. Harry took Michaela's sports attire from her school bag. After arriving at the town, he let the bionic dog smell it. The bionic dog didn't take long to analyze the smell and lock onto a similar smell that it could detect nearby. They ran towards a rundown factory yard. Harry and his guards immediately followed. Harry knew the capabilities of his bionic dogs, but he had never fully tested them or seen them in action. Ordinary dogs required a long period of training, and due to the natural limitations of living creatures, there was a limit to what they could detect and how well they could follow the scent. However, with the help of advanced technology, the bionic dog's ability to smell was 100 times better than normal hunting dogs, and the range of detection was also 10 times larger than a normal dog. Harry wanted to rush to the front, but June stopped him. The group of wolf guards split into 2 teams. One team headed to the target courtyard, while the other team stayed behind to protect Harry. Everyone's weapons were loaded and ready for any encounter. They were prepared to fight if it became necessary. The courtyard was filled with scrap metal in various levels of deterioration. The building was probably a recycling plant at some point. In the room adjacent to the yard, there were a few people drinking and yelling. They weren't aware of anything that was happening outside. There were a few dogs that were out watching the courtyard and had a keen eye for any people that might be snooping around. They weren't prepared for a menacing mechanical dog to leap to the top of the wall. All the dogs in the courtyard had their tails tucked between their legs and they began to whimper. Harry's bionic dog bared its teeth at all the dogs in the yard, causing them to lose the will to fight. While the bionic dog looked naturally menacing to people, it wouldn't be as frightening to animals. Stephen and the research team developed a pheromone that, when coupled with the right frequency from the bionic dog's speakers, made other animals cower in fear. The smell wasn't noticeable to people, but to animals, it stuck out like a giant warning sign, which would cause them to cower or even run away. The watchdogs were no longer willing to call out when they saw a threat approaching, so the people in the room naturally didn't know what was happening outside. They were still happily drinking wine. They were left completely unaware of the dangers that had just appeared at their doorstep. The squad in charge of the Wolf Guard's assault team ran to the wall that wasn't too tall and jumped into the yard. None of the dogs showed any sign of retaliation against Harry's men. The bionic dog leaped off the wall into the courtyard and began to slowly walk around, making sure none of the dogs were willing to fight. The dogs in the yard were all frightened. They were afraid to bark. They hid in their kennels with their tails between their legs. The people of Wolfguard used the window to observe the situation in the room, but only one room was lit. There were a few men drinking inside, and they couldn't see Michaela among them. Some of the Wolfguard had thought they had come to the wrong place, when one of the men noticed that he recognized the people inside. They were Hess's men. He immediately reported this information to Harry. Harry was very surprised, but he didn't dare to act rashly if they didn't kidnap Michaela. Perhaps Michaela was locked away somewhere by these people. If they alerted the enemy now, they would use Michaela as a hostage, and Harry would have to submit. The people Harry brought with him were all strong, but when it came to dealing with hostages, no one could guarantee that nothing would go wrong. If there was a mistake, Michaela could get hurt. "Sir, what should we do now? Should we break in and capture these people, or should we wait a little longer?" the people from the Wolf Guard asked. Harry pondered for a moment and said, "Let's wait a little longer. Michaela must be here. Let's search the other surrounding buildings first." "Yes, sir." The Wolf Guard immediately started to take action. Harry believed that the bionic dog wouldn't be wrong. On top of that, it matched the location Stephen had designated from the surveillance cameras. In addition, these people were actually from Hess's group. Harry didn't believe in coincidences. The ones who captured Michaela must be these people. However, for the sake of safety, Harry couldn't alert them for the time being. The Wolf Guard quickly searched the other buildings. There was nothing inside. There were only 4 buildings in this courtyard, except for the one with the lights on. No one else lived here. Harry's heart became anxious when he didn't find Michaela. His patience was waning and he was about to order his men to go after the men inside. At this time, something unexpected happened. The Wolf Guard, who was quietly searching the courtyard, issued a short warning. "Everyone hide! Someone is coming!" The noise in the main room with the lights on had become quieter. 2 people walked out unsteadily. "Hey, I think I had too much to drink," said a skinny man. "You're a lightweight. You can't even walk properly. If you keep drinking like this, you're going to get yourself killed," said the muscular man. "You don't know what you are talking about. Besides, I'll never have a woman as pretty as that girl that we picked up. I'm hopeless," replied the skinny man. "Look, I want to go back inside, but I can't until you get yourself together," the muscular man pleaded. Through the equipment on the Wolf Guard's body, Harry could clearly hear the conversation between these 2 men. The analysis of their conversation had confirmed that Michaela had been caught by these people. Harry could no longer hold himself back. He wanted to get up and order everyone to kill their way in. June grabbed him and shook her head at Harry. "Sir, there's no rush. Michaela should be fine. We just need to know where she is being held." Harry could only suppress his anxious heart. He also understood that June was right. He couldn't be too anxious at this time to prevent things from getting worse. He continued to calm down and listen to the conversation between the 2. "Look, man, you don't get it. I've no idea what I'm doing with my life anymore. I just want to be happy," said the skinny man. "Are you trying to leave us? After all we've been through?" Get real, man. The life you've imagined in your head is unrealistic. The muscular man raised his voice. Hey, I was just thinking out loud. I don't know, but when I saw that girl, something inside me hurt. I started thinking that I could be happy with someone else, you know? The skinny man replied. You've been drinking too much lately? Hey, that's true. Ever since Hess turned his back on us, I've been thinking about a lot of things. Who cares? In the past, we respected him as the boss, but he left us. Hey, you're right. The two of them were sipping from their beer cans in the yard while chattering away. Harry wanted to kill these two men. June, on the other hand, saw that the two of them had finished and were ready to go back inside. At this moment, she knew that she couldn't wait any longer. Assault team, be careful. Get close to the two of them. Don't alert the people in the room, June ordered. Yes, ma'am. The wolf guard who was hiding in the yard responded decisively. In the dark courtyard, a few black shadows moved silently. In the blink of an eye, the two hoodlums were taken down with their mouths covered. In just a few seconds, without any noise, they had succeeded. Report, we got them, said one of the wolf guard. Quickly interrogate and find out Michaela's whereabouts, June replied. Yes, ma'am. Wolfguard dragged the two of them into an empty building. The two of them widened their eyes in fear. They waved their arms and legs in an attempt to resist, but they were met with a violent beating. The building was incredibly dark, and the two drunk men could only make out a few of the shapes inside. They immediately began to beg for mercy. Please, I beg you. I don't have any money. We just recycle scrap here. There is nothing of value that you can take. The wolf guard gave the two of them a fierce punch in the stomachs. Shut up and be honest. Now I'll ask one question and you'll answer it. If you don't tell me the truth, I'll cut off your tongues. The two of them hurriedly nodded. Where is the girl you took? The wolf guard interrogated. They didn't ask if they had captured Michaela, but where she was locked up. Sure enough, the moment they asked this question, the two men's expressions changed. In the darkness, they couldn't see the wolf guard clearly, but the wolf guard could see their expressions clearly through their night vision goggles. Tell me honestly, since we've found you, it means that we followed you here. Don't try to hide anything from us or we'll beat you to death. The wolf guard continued to threaten them. However, it was obvious that they had overestimated these two hoodlums. In fact, they didn't need to continue to threaten them. These two men were already frightened out of their wits. They were astonished at the speed that someone came looking for the girl. They had taken her only a couple of hours ago. She must have been someone important or people wouldn't have found them so quickly. Originally, they thought that Michaela was just an ordinary student and didn't have any important status. They had thought they could get some money for her ransom from a desperate family. Then they continued to run according to the original plan. No one could find her. However, they didn't think that they would be found before they could even begin. These gangsters were indeed Hess's former subordinates. Tonight, they were originally driving back to the city to pack up some luggage that they didn't have time to bring with them to their new hideout. They were out running errands so they could plan their next move. They would stay in the city for the time being, and they would leave the next day. However, when they were out grabbing beer, they saw Michaela on the road. They were surprised to see her walking alone so late at night on an empty street. Then, a bold idea appeared in their minds. They knew this was their chance to capture Michaela and use her to ransom some cash so they could start their new lives. It was late at night and there was no one around. A girl was walking alone on the road. It was a perfect crime. With evil intentions in mind, a few of them stopped the car. When Michaela walked past, they directly grabbed her and took her away. Initially, Harry wanted to let these people off the hook. He wanted them to leave the city so that he wouldn't pursue the matter any further. However, they still wanted to capture and ransom his sister. This was unforgivable. Quick, tell us, where did you lock her up? The wolf guard asked with a stern voice. In the basement. The two thugs immediately confessed. Harry didn't expect that Michaela was actually locked in the basement by them. In the countryside, most of the houses had basements built to store food. Their goal was to attract as little attention as possible. Using the basement as a prison would ensure no one saw or heard Michaela if she tried to escape. In the countryside, she would be even harder to find as all the other houses were too far away to hear her. It was no wonder that Harry couldn't find any traces of Michaela after finding this courtyard. How many people do you have here? Other than those drinking in the room, is there anyone else in the basement? The wolf guard continued their interrogation. Yes, there are 5 of us drinking in the back. One of the guys drank a little too much just now. He said it was cool in the basement, so he went to sleep down there. The hooligan's words frightened Harry. Harry thought that a drunken man was dangerous and could hurt Michaela. Hurry up and ask where the entrance to the basement is, Harry anxiously ordered. Tell me, where's the entrance to the basement? Wolfguard followed after him and asked. It's easy to find. The room isn't big. There is a wooden board at the end of the bed covering the entrance. The thug was very insightful and told everything he knew. Harry had already gotten all the clues, so there was no need for him to ask any more questions. He immediately ordered, Everyone, attack. Take care of the people on the ground level first. When you enter the basement, use extreme caution. Yes, sir. With the order given, everyone immediately took action. The two hoodlums were knocked unconscious so they couldn't alert the others. Then, the group of Wolfguard quickly approached the main house. The people inside were still drinking, and they had no idea what was happening outside. They were just wondering where the other two had gone. What are those two doing? Did they leave? Said a man. Let them do whatever they want. I can't wait any longer. We should call that guy and tell him we have Michaela, and if he wants her back, he is going to have to pay, said a tall man. Fine. Go get the girl, and if you see the other guy down there bothering her, kick his teeth in. I don't want anyone to harm that girl, said a large man. The few of them stood up impatiently and prepared to walk to the basement. But at this time, something unexpected happened. The lights in the room went out all of a sudden. Then in the darkness, glass and wood were shattered. A group of men in black entered the room at lightning speed, and before the thugs could react, they were beaten to the ground. A few of the thugs were on the ground shouting at the Wolfguard, demanding to know why they had busted into their business and attacked them. Be quiet! Wolfguard was also just fooling around casually. The gangsters were about to cry. Why are you here? Can't we drink in peace at our own workplace? I said shut up. The Wolfguard didn't hesitate and kicked the man in the stomach. It was difficult for him to catch his breath while lying on the ground. Please stop, I can't breathe, the thug said with difficulty. Harry had already walked into the house. Seeing the thugs begging, Harry didn't care whether they lived or not. He waved his hand and said, Go into the basement. You must ensure Michaela's safety. Yes, sir. The hoodlums were immediately shocked. They had no idea that someone would come for Michaela that quickly. They had only now been discussing when they should call and ask for a ransom. They all began to wonder how they were found so quickly. They all began to realize how screwed they were. Harry wasn't a man to be trifled with, and they were going to see the worst side of him tonight. Immediately, they began to sob. If they had known this would happen, they wouldn't have dared to think about kidnapping Michaela. The thugs knew it was too late to say anything now. Knowing that one of their men was downstairs alone with Michaela, they hoped he really was asleep. Otherwise, if he touched a single hair on Michaela's body, they would certainly be killed. What they didn't know was that their friend only pretended to be too drunk so he could go down and watch Michaela. He was bored and hadn't spoken to such a pretty girl before. He thought that if he got to know more about her, he could ask for a larger ransom. After entering the basement, he pretended to sleep and deceived the few people who came to check on him. When the other men were confident he was asleep, they covered the basement and went back to drinking. Michaela was already scared out of her wits. Now she was trapped alone with a strange man. Before she could think of a way to escape from the basement, she saw the sleeping man get up from the couch. He had a malicious smile on his face. Michaela was tied to a post and couldn't move. She could only sit down or stand up. Both positions were uncomfortable. Hey, girl, stop struggling. You won't be able to escape this basement. There's only one exit. There are still people upstairs, the man said proudly. You, hurry up and let me go. Otherwise, you'll be in trouble, Michaela threatened weakly. The man was very narcissistic as he ruffled his hair. So I can be all alone down here with no one to talk to? I thought I was interesting, don't you think so? Michaela almost threw up when she saw his pockmarked face. Don't come near me. I'll kick you to death if you touch me. The man laughed. A little girl like you? Ha, don't make me laugh. Michaela was so anxious that she almost cried. She thought to herself, if only I had a weapon, I would cave his ugly face in. Stop struggling. You'll only hurt yourself. Michaela knew that she was in a difficult spot with no way out, but she wasn't a person that would give up so easily. She threatened, If you come any closer to me, I'll scream. She forgot that she was underground. The man immediately laughed. Go ahead, shout, no one is going to hear you. After he said that, he was amused. Watch, help me, please help me. See, no one is coming, the man said, mimicking her voice. Although Michaela put on a facade, she was panicking and her heart was pounding louder and louder in her ears. In this kind of situation, she couldn't think of any other way to escape. Just as the man took a step closer to Michaela, the cover of the basement suddenly flung open. The man immediately stepped back and turned around impatiently. What do you guys want now? June jumped down with a flying kick to the man's face. The man spun around, spitting blood and teeth as he fell. Under the pain, he couldn't say anything. June was the first to come down, followed by Harry. Under the dim light in the basement, Harry saw Michaela. He saw that she was tied up by a rope. She didn't seem to be injured, apart from the marks around her bindings. Only then did Harry heave a sigh of relief. However, he had to vent the anger that he had been holding back for the rest of his life. Drag this piece of trash up with the others, Harry ordered angrily. Yes, sir. A few of the wolf guard walked down one after another, dragging the man along as they walked up. The sudden turn of events stunned Michaela. Her brain couldn't react in time, and she just stared blankly at the arrogant hooligan being dragged away like a dead dog. And the one standing in front of her was Harry, a person who saved her once, but she didn't expect to save her again. Harry, why are you here? Michaela was so excited that she couldn't even speak properly. Harry squatted down and untied the rope as he comforted her. It's all right. Don't be afraid. No one will be able to hurt you now that I am with you. Michaela had lost all hope in her heart because of what had happened today. When that man had come towards her just now, Michaela was going to bite the man as hard as she could. She hoped that would be enough to make him stop. She was disgusted by that ugly man, and she would do anything to get away. This was the only way Michaela could think of in her despair. She never imagined Harry would come in and save her. After Harry untied her, Michaela angrily stopped the wolf guards, who had already dragged the man outside, and walked in front of the man. She lifted her leg and kicked him hard. The one kick was satisfying, but Michaela was still angry. She kicked him a few more times. The man kept screaming, but he didn't try to resist. He didn't dare to move. Harry's men were watching him, and he knew if he hurt the girl, they would kill him. However, if the man dared to lay a finger on Michaela, they wouldn't hesitate to kill him. Harry watched Michaela beat the man up. He didn't stop her. He started to see some of himself and his father and his sister. If this kind of thing were to happen to Harry, he would also want to vent his anger, though he was more likely to kill his captors than just rough them up. Michaela may have wanted to kill this man, but she was just an ordinary girl. Her attacks were quite strong, but she couldn't take the man's life. Harry would never forgive these people who dared to kidnap his sister. If Michaela couldn't take their lives, Harry would. Harry grabbed Michaela's hand and said gently, "Go upstairs, go to the car and relax. You must have been scared." Michaela took the opportunity to snuggle into Harry's arms and nodded gently. She didn't care about how Harry appeared anymore. She was now saved from a disaster and would no longer have any strange feelings toward Harry. Her heart was filled with gratitude and reliance on Harry. Under Harry's instructions, June brought Michaela outside. When they passed by the house, they saw a few other gangsters being held by the wolf guard. Michaela was furious again. She picked up a stick from the ground and swung it at them. Michaela swung at them as hard as she could. Before she hit one of the men, she saw that he had been beaten till he was bloody and looked like he was about to die. Harry hurriedly stopped Michaela from venting her anger. "All right, I'll handle these cretins. You can go to the car and rest." Harry was doing this not because he wanted to spare the lives of these hoodlums, but because he didn't want Michaela's hands to be stained with blood. She was his younger sister, and she was still rather young. She should have lived a different life, a happier life. Now that Harry was here, he could make it so she would live comfortably from now on. Therefore, Harry didn't want Michaela to carry such a burden on her conscience. Harry thought, besides, she just swings randomly. I don't think she could kill anybody even if she tried. Michaela listened and asked, "What'll you do with them?" Harry touched her head and said, "I won't let them off lightly. Don't look at them anymore. Go with June." After saying that, he pushed Michaela and urged her to leave the room. When Michaela obediently followed June out the door and saw the huge and majestic bionic dog standing in the courtyard, she was shocked once again. This was the first time she saw such a big dog. Seeing that she was very afraid, June pulled her hand to comfort her. "Don't be afraid. This big dog is Mr. Parker's. It won't hurt you." "Mr. Parker?" Michaela said in surprise. June nodded. "We're all Mr. Parker's subordinates. We were able to find you so quickly with the help of this dog." Michaela was stunned. She couldn't understand what June said. Wasn't Harry a construction worker? How could he afford to hire so many people? Also, how did Harry know that she was kidnapped? And why did he come to find her so quickly? What's going on? Michaela thought. Michaela's heart was in a complete mess. No one could answer these questions for her. Following June out of the courtyard after seeing the dozens of cars outside that looked very luxurious, Michaela was confused again. June could tell Michaela had a million questions, but she was unable to answer all of them. The only person that could answer them was Harry. Seeing Michaela's confusion, she could only say, "All your questions will be answered soon. Don't worry about them. You are safe now. When Mr. Parker is done inside, he'll come back and will answer all your questions." Michaela lightly nodded her head. Before she bent down and sat in the car, she suddenly asked June, "Harry, why is he interested in me?" After saying this, Michaela's entire face became bright red. Michaela thought that she had jumped out of the frying pan and into the fire. She concluded that Harry was a rich man like Muller, and he had fallen in love with her. Instead of treating her poorly, he wanted to get to know her first. That was why he concealed his identity. All sorts of thoughts lingered in her mind. Michaela felt these thoughts didn't make much sense, so she quickly dispelled these thoughts. When June heard her speak, her expression suddenly became strange. Michaela looked at June's expression and laughed, thinking that she had jumped to the wrong conclusion. She was a nobody from a small family that barely had enough money to buy groceries. They weren't people that attracted a lot of attention. Mueller and Harry were both rich and had their eyes set on Michaela for different reasons. Michaela thought it was very strange that she would meet these men. Michaela began to analyze why she had been chosen out of everyone in the city. She looked at June and knew that she was one of the most beautiful women in the world, concluding that Harry wasn't interested in her for her looks. She was still young and next to June looked like a child. June saw Michaela's eyes flicker and her emotions were unstable. June smiled and said, "You're overthinking it. I guarantee you'll never guess Mr. Parker's reasoning. You don't have to wait too long. He will tell you personally." Michaela nodded. "Okay, I'll wait for him." June settled her down before turning around and returning to the courtyard to look for Harry. In the house, Harry wasn't idle either. Harry already had a plan. To dare mess with his sister, these people wouldn't walk out of here. Harry looked at them with killing intent in his eyes. He had no intention of hiding it anymore. However, a person's desire to live was very strong. No matter what the situation was, in order to survive, people would do anything. Michaela was taken away, leaving only them, Harry, and his subordinates with hostile expressions. A few of the hoodlums immediately made a decision and crawled toward Harry. They kept bowing as they crawled. Harry was amused by their actions. "Sir, please spare us," said the one. Harry looked at the pathetic men and sneered. "Are you stupid?" Yes, we're stupid and weren't thinking. But we didn't hurt the girl, did we? Please spare us." "If I hadn't arrived in time, my sister would have been hurt by you, and you still dare to beg me for mercy. What right do you have to beg?" Harry was furious. The gangsters were speechless. At this time, they really didn't have any room to negotiate with Harry. Harry didn't bother to look at these gangsters again. He turned around and ordered, "Let them know the price for trying to hurt my family. Break their legs and let them crawl to the nearest hospital. I want them to wish for death." "Yes, sir," the wolf guard replied in a loud voice. The overwhelming force scared the 6 thugs out of their wits. It would be too easy for them to die. With the broken limbs and being nowhere near a hospital, they would never walk again. Living a life worse than death, it was more torturous than dying in this recycling plant. Harry gave the order and walked out of the room. He went to the courtyard and looked at the parked car. Harry exhaled. Next, he had to explain the relationship between him and Michaela. Harry still felt a little uncomfortable with the sudden change. The bionic dog that had been sitting in the yard walked over with its tail wagging when it saw Harry. It looked like it was trying to please him. Harry rubbed its big head and sent it to the side. Although the bionic dog was a robot, it still had all the mannerisms of a real dog. Harry wasn't moved at all when he heard the continuous screams in the other room. This world was cruel and evil. These thugs would learn that harsh lesson. Harry knew he had to be ruthless to make it in this world. If he didn't, Michaela would have been the one who got hurt. The thugs weren't worthy of sympathy. They had met their fate. June walked in from outside the yard and looked at Harry as if she wanted to say something, but stopped herself. Harry asked, "If you've something to say it." June said, "Sir, I think Michaela probably likes you." Harry smiled and said, "Isn't this what I want? Wouldn't make a lot of sense if she didn't like me." June hurriedly shook her head and said, "No, sir, I think she means the other kind of like." Harry was stunned. "What?" Then he started to scratch his head with a headache. His own sister had fallen in love with him. This wasn't right. From the beginning to the end, Harry treated Michaela as his younger sister. But thinking about the recent interaction between the two, Harry suddenly realized that he should have told them about their blood relationship earlier. What should I do? Harry said with a headache. June smiled. That's why this matter cannot be delayed. Taking advantage of the fact that Michaela isn't deeply involved, you should quickly explain why you are here. Harry sighed. That is the only way. June saw Harry's frightened look and smiled. Sir, you don't have to worry. Michaela just likes you a little. It isn't love. Harry nodded with a heavy heart. I was almost scared to death just now. I have to go and explain things now. As he spoke, Harry lifted his leg and rushed out of the yard. He opened the door of Michaela's car. Before he could say anything, Harry was stunned to find that Michaela had already fallen asleep with her head against the window. After that, Harry gently closed the door of the car and let her continue to rest. She had been through a lot in the past few days. It was probably best to just let her sleep. She was lucky she hadn't been seriously hurt. Michaela felt inexplicably comfortable in Harry's car. She felt safe. She closed her eyes for just a moment and fell asleep. Michaela didn't know why she felt safe in his car, but she wouldn't question it. The first time she met Harry, she couldn't help but feel like she had known him. So when she sat in Harry's car and quietly waited for him to come back, Michaela felt incomparably relaxed and fell asleep without realizing it. Michaela hadn't slept well in years. The constant abuse at home made it impossible to sleep without waking up throughout the night. When she was at home, especially after Michaela grew up and became sensible, she was always scared. Her stepfather would beat her almost every night. After Harry's subordinates dealt with the hoodlums, he brought everyone out of the courtyard. He carefully returned to the car. Harry didn't want to disturb Michaela, so he quietly ordered his subordinates to return to the city. He ordered them all to be as quiet as possible. At this time, the town was still quiet. None of the dogs in the town were barking. It was because Harry's bionic dog had been wandering around the town. Not a single dog dared to make a sound. It wouldn't be until the morning that the people in the town would know what happened during the night. However, that wasn't what Harry needed to worry about. Crippling a few gangsters was a small matter. The only thing worth paying attention to was his sister, who was sleeping next to him. The convoy drove back towards the city. During the period when Harry rescued Michaela's family had also gone crazy looking for her. They were worried about her safety only for the money they were going to receive. They didn't care about her. Muller was just as worried for his own reasons. Although it was already midnight, he had no intention of falling asleep. He continued to lead his subordinates to search for Michaela's whereabouts. Muller was a night owl. He usually slept late into the day and stayed up all night. Michaela's family thought he was going out of his way for them. They felt that Muller really cared about Michaela. He was tired of dealing with Michaela's family. They were like mosquitoes buzzing in his head. Muller, did you find anything? It's almost dawn. I'm really worried, Michaela's mother said. Why are you so anxious? He has already called his people. They're bound to find her eventually, Michaela's stepfather said. As for Howie, he had long since fallen asleep in his seat. Their family had already returned home. They had gone to the school in Muller's car to search for Michaela before coming back to the house. It was useless for Muller to bring them there. No one knew where Michaela had gone. Muller was waiting quietly in their house. As a rich man, he couldn't go out to look for her personally. He would leave everything to his people. However, he had waited for almost the whole night. Muller was feeling impatient. It was true that he had taken a fancy to Michaela. He offered $5 million for her hand in marriage. It wasn't a small amount of money, but to Muller it was nothing. Muller's family had plenty of money. The pocket money that Muller usually spent to have fun was much more than this. What annoyed him was that Michaela was just a plaything in his eyes. She had run away before he even got her hands on her. Although it was a pity, it wasn't a loss. It was enough to search for her for a night. He wouldn't waste his time searching for a toy all day long. Hence, when Michaela's mother asked, Muller was too lazy to answer. Muller was bored with Michaela's family and thought it was a waste to spend the whole night at their house. Thinking of this, Muller prepared to leave. Michaela's family saw him stand up and hurriedly asked, Muller, what are you doing? Muller casually said, I'm leaving. I don't want to wait anymore. Then you don't want to find Michaela? Muller said in annoyance. Does it look like I can't live without her? But what about the money? Muller thought she was kidding. Without Michaela, he wouldn't give them a penny. Muller immediately sneered. If Michaela were here, you would already have the money. Yes, she was just mischievous and went out to play. When she comes back, we'll personally deliver her to you. They were shamelessly asking for money for their own daughter. Mueller was disgusted with these people. You don't even know where she ran off to. You still want to ask for my money? Mueller laughed angrily. Come on, don't be like that. We're practically family now. How can you treat us so poorly? Mueller wanted to applaud them for their shamelessness. Mueller turned to leave and one of his men opened the door and said, We found her. The news Mueller's men brought back made everyone's eyes widen. Her family began to frantically ask the man questions. Mueller raised his hand and said, Did you come back by yourself, or is she with you? The subordinate then said, It's just me. He hesitated for a moment, but before he could say anything else, he was interrupted by Michaela's family. Michaela's stepfather said excitedly with a surprised look on his face. Mueller, what did I say? I knew she would come back. Michaela's mother also nodded and said, That's right. This is her home. Where else could she go? Mueller nodded expressionlessly. Then I won't be in such a hurry to leave. Sit here. Howie, go and make tea for Mueller, Michaela's stepfather said. Mueller didn't care about drinking their tea. How could that kind of quality be worthy for him to taste? But it was still all right to sit down and wait for a while. He nodded and sat back down on the sofa. However, his guard came to Mueller's side with a complicated expression. He lowered his head and said softly, Sir, Michaela didn't come back alone, Mueller said in puzzlement. What do you mean? The guard pointed to the window on the balcony and said, You should take a look yourself. Mueller immediately stood up and walked to the window and looked down. At this time, Harry's motorcade had already arrived downstairs. Harry was helping Michaela out of the car. Michaela had a coat around her that she took off and tried to give it back to Harry. Harry pressed on Michaela's shoulder and said, Keep it. I don't want you to catch a cold. Michaela looked at Harry's face that was close to her, and the warmth from his hands that were pressing on her shoulders. Michaela stopped and placed a kiss on Harry's cheek. This kiss might seem light to others, but Harry thought it was the sweetest thing. On the way back, Michaela had been sleeping all the time. Harry didn't have the chance to tell her about them being siblings. When they reached downstairs, they woke Michaela up and got out of the car. Harry didn't expect her to kiss him on the cheek. Harry was stunned for a while before he reacted. Luckily, she only kissed him on the face, not on the lips. This was normal in many places in the world, and was seen as a term of endearment. June looked at Harry. He looked like he was struck by lightning, and she almost couldn't help but laugh. The members of the Wolf Guard knew Michaela and Harry were related. Therefore, they acted as if they didn't see it, and turned to look elsewhere. Mueller saw all of this. In Mueller's eyes, Michaela was to be his wife. He was angry that she would even talk to another man. Mueller was angry with Harry even though he had no idea who he was. However, he could guess that Harry was somewhat powerful with the car he came out of and all the people that seemed to be his employees. Mueller thought that something must have happened between him and Michaela. Mueller thought himself to be an excellent judge of character and was confident he knew Harry was a bad man. Immediately, he was burning with anger. He said angrily to Michaela's family members, who were also lying on the windowsill and looking down, Okay, how am I supposed to marry her if she's with another man? Michaela's mother anxiously said, No, Mueller, this has to be a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? You really are that stupid. The truth is right in front of me. Do you want me to pretend that I can't see? Mueller sneered. Michaela's stepfather said, This must be a misunderstanding. Michaela is a good child and wouldn't act recklessly. If that's the case, then why is she stepping out of another man's car? I wasn't born yesterday. Mueller cursed angrily. Then he said, Had she come home with one of my men or on her own, then we could have discussed our deal. Now I'm not even sure I should even waste my breath talking to you. Michaela's stepfather actually didn't care about such insulting words at all. He even said with a worried face, Mueller, what do you mean? I mean, my offer has changed. 500,000 and not a penny more, Mueller said confidently. Michaela's family looked at each other. After a while, Michaela's mother gritted her teeth and said, Mueller, if it's a misunderstanding, will you honor our original agreement? Her stepfather added, That seems fair to me. Mueller was very proud of this family's submissive attitude. In any case, he wouldn't be at a disadvantage. He nodded and said, Yes, let's do it this way, but what? The mother said. If you lie to me, the consequences won't be small, Mueller said. Michaela's family and Mueller reached an evil agreement with a few words, but Michaela had no say in any of it. At this time, she was being held by Harry and sent upstairs with a happy face. He didn't know if he should tell the truth now. She had just been rescued from the kidnapping. Harry didn't know if it was appropriate to say something so earth-shattering now. Harry's heart was in a mess. and he couldn't make up his mind. Finally, he arrived at Michaela's house. Before he could knock on the door was opened. Before Michaela entered the house, her family started to scold her. "Where did you go all night?" said her mother. "Do you know how much effort Muller put in to find you?" said her stepfather. Harry stared at the family with his mouth agape. He suddenly felt that it was better not to have such a family. No wonder Michaela had long had the idea of running away from this family. If it were Harry, he wouldn't have been able to take it. Even a few minutes would be unbearable to stay in this family. Michaela's mother saw that she was in a daze and didn't speak, so she became more and more anxious. She secretly thought to herself, "Tell Muller that nothing happened." Thinking of this, she pulled Michaela over. "Come, let's go back to the house and talk about it." Michaela struggled to break free from her grip. "What are you talking about? I just came back and you guys are already yelling at me. Don't you even care about me?" Michaela felt very wronged. She was forced to run away from home by her family and was kidnapped. If Harry hadn't unexpectedly saved her, Michaela might have gotten seriously hurt. Now that she had come home, not only did her family not say some comforting words, they sounded like they were upset that she was just gone all night. Not only was she being questioned, even Harry was implicated as well. Howie had been watching from the living room. He said coldly, "Of course we don't care. We only want the money Muller is offering us for you. He said that you were only worth $500,000 now. Unless you tell us exactly what happened last night, he won't pay us the $5 million he originally offered." Michaela heard Howie's words and was so angry that her hair almost stood up. Before she could say anything, Michaela's mother grabbed her again. Michaela couldn't break free and was pulled into the room. Her mother pulled her as she said, "Quickly tell him what you did last night." Hearing this, Michaela's tears immediately flowed out. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "I'm doing this for your own good. You should be thankful that Muller is even interested in you. You should be happy that he wants to marry you." Muller's eyes lit up when he saw Michaela being pulled in. She had been taken in the middle of the night by some horrible men, tied up in a cold basement and had to almost fight for her life. Now she was back in her terrible home and she was being accosted by her own family like she had done something wrong. All for money from some rich kid who didn't even know her. She was disgusted, tired, and afraid. Muller sat on the sofa and didn't speak. He just quietly waited. However, Harry, who was at the door, couldn't hold it in anymore. He couldn't tolerate his sister being abused like this by her own family. When he saw Michaela being pulled, Harry immediately shouted, "Stop!" Michaela's stepfather and Howie stood at the door, blocking Harry, who was about to enter. He said in an unfriendly tone, "This is none of your business." Michaela's stepfather clearly didn't remember that Harry had beaten him last night with how brazen he was acting now. However, Muller was sitting in the room, and today, he had brought more men with him. Michaela's stepfather and brother had the courage to speak rudely to Harry. Harry didn't want to waste any more time with these two men. He gave them both a swift punch in the gut. Stepping over the two heads, Harry slapped Michaela's mother's hand away from her daughter. Only then did he carefully grab Michaela's hand to check if she was hurt. With just one look, Harry gritted his teeth and looked at Michaela's mother. "Is this how you treat your own daughter? How can you be so cruel to her?" Michaela's wrist was purple from the grip. It was swollen, which made Harry's heart ache. His sister was being bullied. Harry wished that he could rip these people into pieces right now. Fortunately, Harry still retained some of his rationality and wasn't completely controlled by his emotions. "June, go and get some medicine to deal with the swelling," Harry shouted towards June, who was outside the door. "Yes, sir." June's words stunned Michaela's family. "Who exactly are you? Why do you always butt in on our family matters?" Howie asked in bewilderment. Harry was too lazy to respond to him. He still held Michaela's wrist and asked with concern, "Does it hurt?" Michaela originally felt quite pain, but she didn't know what was going on. When Harry grabbed her hand, she immediately forgot about the pain. She shook her head and said to Harry, "It doesn't hurt that much." Harry said, "It's already swollen, but you still say it doesn't hurt. Why are you lying to me?" Muller couldn't sit still any longer. He jumped up and pointed at Harry. "Where did you come from? Do you know the rules? How dare you talk with my woman in front of me? Do you want to die?" "That's right. You don't get to be here and act like you own the place," Howie chimed in. Harry snorted. "Michaela is your woman?" Muller was so angry that he laughed instead. "Of course she is. I already offered a lot of money for her hand in marriage." Michaela's mother advised earnestly from the side. "Michaela, I'm not going to hurt you. Come over here so we can discuss your marriage with Muller. I don't trust this mystery man that you came home with." Howie became excited when he heard this. He pointed at Harry and said, "This guy isn't trustworthy. He is clearly a poor man, but he still pretends to be some rich man. You're not even playing the part right. You wear shabby clothes and pretend you're rich. Look at Muller. He is what a real rich man looks like." Howie started to mock Harry. Harry's disguise had worked too well. When they first met Harry, he looked like a poor man. It was very hard to believe that he had any money at all. Despite arriving in a very expensive car and being followed by many men, these two people still didn't think that Harry was rich, so it was very easy for him to disguise himself now. He could have been disguised as anything when he met Michaela. Her family would have never guessed his identity. Michaela said to her mother, "Mom, you said this is for my own good. But have you asked how I feel and if you care about what I think? I don't want to get married yet. I still need to go to college." "What nonsense are you saying? Besides, your family doesn't have the money to support you to go to university. You have got an opportunity now," her stepfather said. Before he could finish, she was interrupted by Michaela's angry shout. "Enough! Muller is a scumbag who doesn't even know me. Am I just a way for you to make money?" Everyone was stunned. They didn't expect Michaela to say it out loud. Michaela had already been forced into a dead end. She didn't care about her family anymore. The only thing she cared about was Harry, who had already known what had happened to her last night. Michaela was happy to bring everything out in the open. Her mother, on the other hand, fell back and raised her hand to slap Michaela's face. "How dare you say that?" Michaela closed her eyes and prepared to receive the slap. However, after waiting for a long time, she didn't feel the pain on her face. She opened her eyes and saw Harry grabbing her mother's hand. He threw her mother's hand away with a little force. Michaela's mother let out a cry. She plopped down on the hard floor and gasped in pain. When she finally reacted, she immediately started to curse. "Why did I give birth to such an ungrateful thing like you?" Harry rolled his eyes and thought to himself, "Anyone would be happy being anywhere but with you." When Howie and his father saw Harry making a move, they started shouting, "How dare you hurt her in front of Muller?" The two of them were just putting on a brave face. They had no intention of picking a fight with Harry. They just used Muller and his name to put fear into people. Harry didn't care about Muller in the slightest. Seeing the messy room, Muller was annoyed. "I don't care who you are. You have to give me an explanation." Harry frowned. "What do you want me to say?" "Michaela was promised to me by her family, but you snatched her away." "Tell me what happened?" Muller asked back. Harry shook his head. "Her family can't make that decision for her." Muller was repeatedly looked down upon by Harry and finally couldn't hold it in anymore. He slammed the table and stood up angrily. "Don't think that you are self-righteous just because you found Michaela. You're nothing but a poor loser who should be in awe when talking to me." Michaela's stepfather and Howie also shouted, "Yeah, tell him Muller." Harry was right in front of them. If they didn't fight him, then there would be no one they could take their anger out on. Michaela's mother also interrogated her again. "Tell me the truth. What did you do last night?" Facing the aggressive attitude of the family, the hatred in Michaela's heart was about to explode. She looked at Harry with an apologetic look in her eyes. Before Harry could understand, Michaela nodded her head and said with a firm expression, "What does it matter to any of you? You don't care about me. At least Harry does. He is the one who came to save me." Harry immediately stomped his foot. He thought to himself, "This is really my sister." Michaela's family was stunned. They couldn't believe their ears. Immediately they looked at Muller, wanting to understand what he would do. Muller looked at Michaela and Harry standing close to each other. He immediately sneered, feeling that he was wasting his time. He felt angry that the woman he was promised wanted nothing to do with him. Muller was so angry that he was trembling. He felt like he was about to leap forward and strangle Harry and Michaela. "Harry, you're very proud of yourself, aren't you?" Harry wasn't proud. He was angry. He wanted all the shouting to stop and to tell his sister who he really was. "Michaela, tell them the whole truth. Don't keep them waiting," Harry said. Everyone looked at Harry in shock, especially Michaela. Her eyes widened as she stared at Harry. In her eyes, she seemed to be puzzled by his action of not covering for her. "I was kidnapped," Michaela said. "Impossible, you're lying," her mother screamed. Harry nodded. "She is telling the truth. Michaela didn't return last night because she was kidnapped." Their eyes were filled with disbelief, and they felt that it was absurd. However, the probability of encountering a kidnapping was very difficult for ordinary people to encounter. "Ha ha ha!" Muller suddenly burst into laughter. He couldn't believe the words he was hearing. "What are you laughing at?" Harry asked unhappily. "Ha ha! I really overestimated you. I didn't expect you to be worse than me." Muller didn't believe that Michaela had been kidnapped or anything like that. He thought that Harry was lying so that he could have Michaela all to himself. Howie spoke with ridicule. You really can't come up with a better excuse than kidnapping? Harry took a deep breath. He hated having to explain himself in great detail to stupid people. All right, you want an explanation? Then I'll give you an explanation. June walked in at that moment. Howie and his father had seen June before. They knew how strong she was. Now June was standing beside Harry. In this small and narrow room, anyone close to her could appreciate her beauty. Mueller was shocked. He figured out that she works for Harry. After June walked to Harry's side, she tacitly handed him an envelope. Harry took it, opened it, and took out an appraisal result, displaying it in front of everyone. He said, Michaela, aren't you curious why a stranger like me would be so enthusiastic about meeting you? And you guys, you think it's unusual for Michaela and me to be so close, right? Everyone looked at Harry in confusion, then looked at the document in Harry's hand. Harry's next words were like thunder. Then I'll give you all a clear explanation now. This is all because Michaela and I are siblings. Everyone was dumbstruck as if they had been struck by lightning. They had never thought that Harry would give such an answer. Mueller was dumbfounded. Howie was dumbfounded. Michaela's stepfather looked at the document in Harry's hand with a shocked expression. Michaela's mother, on the other hand, recovered after a moment of confusion. She pointed at Harry in shock and said, could it be that you are? She was trembling for a long time, but she didn't say anything. After that, her eyes rolled into the back of her head and she fainted, as if she couldn't accept this as reality. So long had she been waiting for this day, but it hadn't ever come to pass till now. Her big secret was out in the open, and it was more than she could handle. Howie pounced over. Mom, what's wrong? Wake up quickly and tell us what's going on. Is it true? He was confused and terrified. His mother just collapsed, and he couldn't believe that Harry was Michaela's brother. Harry tilted his head and gestured to June. Wake her up. June nodded and squatted down to push Howie away. Then she pinched Michaela's mother. A moment later, with a breath, Michaela's mother slowly woke up. Harry put the report in her hand and said, I just went to double check. I got the same results as last time. I'm 100% sure that Michaela is my half-sister. Everyone became silent. Michaela, who was the one involved, widened her eyes and looked at Harry in disbelief. Now she understood why Harry didn't want anyone to think that he had done anything to Michaela. He definitely didn't want her to get the wrong idea and think that he had feelings for her. Michaela had no idea where Harry came from or what he wanted. She had no idea that he was her half-brother. She was shocked and couldn't understand what was happening. All her life she had been mistreated, and now she knew she had a kind and caring brother. It was almost too much to handle, but she saw the results of the certificate. The words brother and sister were written very clearly. How could you be my brother? Michaela asked with difficulty. Harry smiled bitterly and shook his head. I need your mother to explain this. I didn't know myself till a few days ago. No, that's impossible. How could you? Michaela's eyes were filled with tears. Her feelings towards Harry were extremely complicated. She had already begun to have a vague, favorable impression of him. She had begun to have a crush on Harry, but she was realizing that kind of feeling was a familial kind of love. Michaela didn't want to admit it, but the results were there on the page. Looking at her mother's expression, she knew that this paper was telling the truth. Mom, can you tell me who my biological father is? Michaela finally calmed down and asked. Her mother's lips trembled up and down. After a while, she looked at Harry and said with a complicated expression, I never thought that after so many years, I hoped it would have been him, not his son. After a sigh, she finally spoke of the old days. She began to explain who she was and what she wanted. Harry's father was just the man she was looking for. Then everyone heard the tale of what happened 17 years ago. Michaela's mother was young and had been in the prime of her life. She had left her parents and went to live on her own. Her family never had a lot of money, so she was well prepared for a hard life. Michaela's mother chose a way to get ahead in life without working. She had made some friends and used them to land some gigs with a couple of modeling agencies. A lot of her early projects cost her more money than she made, but it was worth it. She used her small projects to apply to bigger name magazines to expand her portfolio. Her name and face grew so that she could attend a few of the upper-class parties. Here, Michaela's mother wanted to network and grow her image even more. At one of the parties, she met Harry's father. Back then, he was an impulsive young man. At the banquet, he immediately took a fancy to Michaela's mother. Harry's father had been head over heels for Michaela's mother and wanted to spend all of his time with her. After the party, Harry's father had a few other parties and meetings where he wanted Michaela's mother to come with him. Michaela's mother thought Harry's father was rich and well-connected. She could use him to get noticed by bigger modeling agencies. However, she started to notice that Harry's father was secretive about his wealth and seemed to be one of the most connected men in the world. She noticed that a lot of older men in fancy suits would go out of their way to greet Harry's father. He was always gracious and talked in hushed tones, adding to his mysteriousness. When it came to business, Harry's father was serious and had Michaela's mother stand to the side while he talked. She knew she was out of place and could only wait till he was finished. She had finally met a man that could treat her well for the rest of her life. In her excitement, she tried to make Harry's father happy in any way she could. She figured that he would be her ticket to a high-class life, even if it meant using him to get with an even richer man. She understood that she was attractive, but she knew that Harry's father would get bored of her eventually. He was a rich young man. They never stayed with one woman for long. Her plan was to get pregnant. That way Harry's father would have to stay with her. She would lead Harry's father to bed every night, making sure he was drunk enough to always say yes to anything she asked. Michaela's mother and Harry's father spent the next 2 weeks together, going to parties and returning to the same hotel room. She bought a few pregnancy tests, but they always came up negative. Before they got to the hotel room at the end of the second week, Harry's father received a call and told Michaela's mother that he had to leave urgently. She had imagined that Harry's father would take her with him, or at least exchange numbers so they could contact each other. Instead, Harry's father gave her a large sum of money, packed his bags, and left. The money would have lasted her a lifetime, but she didn't want the money. She wanted to live among the wealthy class and grow her influence and power. Without Harry's father, she felt that her dreams had been crushed in an instant. He left and never made an effort to contact Michaela's mother, leaving her to pick up her life where she had left it before the parties. It wasn't until a week after Harry's father left that she found out that she had gotten pregnant. She laughed at the cruel irony that she had found herself in. She cried at the thought that a week earlier, if she had known, she still would be with Harry's father. Now she was alone and wasn't prepared to have a child. She sat in the bathroom staring at the positive pregnancy test, hoping by some miracle that Harry's father would come back to her. She knew that if Harry's father came back, she wouldn't have to give up on her dreams. 9 months passed, and she gave birth to Michaela. Once they got home from the hospital, Michaela's mother used the money from Harry's father to make sure Michaela grew up happy and healthy. She thought herself lucky to have given birth to such a cute child. She began to think that Harry's father wouldn't dare abandon such a cute baby and her mother. However, she waited for a month and then half a year, 1 year, 2 years, until all the money the rich young man gave her was used up, and the female model realized she really couldn't wait for him any longer. The money would have lasted her a lot longer, but she spent all the money on trying to raise Michaela the best she could. Michaela's mother realized she had wasted her youth and time waiting for a man that wouldn't come. She thought she might have some luck if she started looking for Harry's father herself. She met with many people saying they'd never heard of him, or led her down a dead end. She figured a man like him would be hard to find without any connections. They lived in different worlds, besides knowing his name. She didn't know anything else about his identity. She tried calling everyone they had met at the parties and asked where Harry's father was, or if there was a way to contact him. However, when she asked, they all turned up their noses and refused to talk to her. Now that Harry's father wasn't with her, these high-class people thought she was nothing more than common street trash. With the child in her hands, no one wanted her. They weren't interested in a woman with a child. They all thought she was just a gold digger. From then on, she was gradually isolated from the people she had met at the parties. Soon she was nothing more than an aging model that not many people would hire for a photo shoot. When all her fantasies turned to dust, her expectations turned into hatred. She hated Harry's father for being so heartless. She hated herself even more for foolishly having his child. She hated that she wasted years of her life hoping that Harry's father would come back for her. All this hatred and resentment focused on Michaela. Michaela noticed that when she was younger, her mother was happy and showed her all the love in the world. Then, out of nowhere, her mother turned cruel and yelled at her constantly, even going so far as beating her when she did nothing wrong. Michaela's mother eventually met Michaela's stepfather, and they got married shortly after that. When Howie was born, she was cast aside and belittled by both her parents. Howie got all the love and attention he could ever want, while Michaela locked herself away in her room and began to hate her family. Michaela's mother had tears streaming down her face when she told them about her past. Michaela looked at Harry, her eyes full of grievance. 17 long years and they had finally met. She was happy to see that she had an older brother that actually cared about her. Michaela's mother had sacrificed her own life for an unreachable dream. Harry pitied her somewhat. Ignoring the anger he felt for abusing his sister, he could see that she was just a pathetic woman. But that wouldn't absolve her from taking out her frustrations on her daughter. After all, Michaela was innocent. Michaela's mother chose to get pregnant so that she could marry a rich man. She had to take responsibility for Michaela. Harry felt sorry for his sister. If his father knew that he had gotten Michaela's mother pregnant, he wouldn't have left them to fend for themselves. He would have brought them to his family and they would have lived a comfortable life. Had he figured out that Michaela's mother was only using him for her own personal gain, he would have taken Michaela and not her mother. Wealthy families were cruel and heartless when it came to such matters. The truth had finally come out. No one doubted that Harry and Michaela were related. Harry had come for Michaela. He wanted to take her away from her horrible life with a mother that resented her, and a stepfather that saw her as nothing more than a prize to be sold off. When they all calmed down from questioning Harry and Michaela's mother, Michaela felt her heart ache. She couldn't help herself. She was overjoyed that she had an older brother. As for her mother, she felt a wave of conflicting emotions. Michaela hated her mother for treating her so poorly and pitied her for losing her dreams to a series of unfortunate events. She had waited for 17 years to tell the truth, all while resenting her own daughter. Michaela's mother was confused for a long time before she suddenly became excited. "Is your father coming to pick me up?" Harry could only find this kind of question funny. "Sorry, I'm only here to pick up Michaela. As for my father, he passed away many years ago." Harry had dashed her hopes with a single sentence. He didn't feel pity telling her that his father was gone. He knew she only wanted to use him like she had planned to do 17 years ago. Harry had no love for Michaela's mother. She was nothing to him. He'd be happy to leave her to rot in the life she had built for herself. She spoke in a whispered tone. "How did he die? No wonder he didn't come to find me. What are you going to do with us?" Michaela's mother began to cry when she heard that Harry's father had died. Harry knew these tears were fake and wouldn't let them sway his emotions. Harry knew that she was sadder to hear that Harry's father forgot about her than that he had died. He said bluntly, "Stop acting. He died years ago. Besides, you're married now. You're no longer mine or Michaela's problem." "You can't say that. I took care of Michaela by myself for years. You can't separate us, can you?" Michaela's mother began to worry. Michaela's stepfather was angry. The moment he saw his wife asking for another man and to be taken away, he frowned. He was angry that Harry and his family had abandoned Michaela's mother. He was unaware that she would drop him in a second if it meant she could live a life of luxury. He said, "That's right. My wife has been through so much hardship. Your family abandoned her." Harry understood what they meant. He sneered and said, "If you have something to say, just say it." "You owe us for taking care of Michaela," he said. "Yeah, it was so hard taking care of her. She cost me a lot of money," Michaela's mother said. Harry thought to himself that they were really a perfect couple. They were only focused on money. Howie laid on the windowsill and looked at Harry's luxurious motorcade downstairs, and then at the group of men in black suits. Only now did he understand that they were all Harry's guards. Muller didn't have nearly as many men, nor were they as well equipped. Howie figured that Harry was even more rich than Muller. He started to plan a scheme. He would use his relationship with Michaela to squeeze out some money from Harry. He figured that his plan would work because Harry was his older stepbrother. Howie became excited. He no longer looked at Harry with disgust. Howie was no longer willing to listen to his parents talk about money. He thought that if he played his cards right, Harry would take him with Michaela. Then he could join Harry's family and be rich and powerful beyond his wildest dreams. Howie rushed over and fell to his knees and slid in front of Harry. He hugged Harry's thigh and began to plead. "I'm so glad to have such a wonderful brother. You've come for me and my sister. You're going to take us away from our horrible parents." Everyone was stunned when they saw Howie groveling. Harry didn't expect this kid to come to such an unexpected place. He didn't have the time to react and was also stunned. "I'm not your brother. Let go of me," Harry said angrily. Howie was stubborn. "Don't be so mean to me. You said it yourself. You're Michaela's brother and I'm Michaela's brother. That means we're brothers." Michaela walked up to Howie unhappily and pulled him off Harry. "What's wrong with you?" Howie refused to let go. Nothing is wrong. I just love my brother so much, Michaela's mother scolded Howie. Nonsense. What are you messing around for? Go back to your room. Mom, I'm doing this for the family. When I'm rich, I'll take good care of you. Harry couldn't stand it any longer. He lifted his leg and threw Howie away. He said mockingly, "You think I want you to come with us? Get real." "No, you can't do this to me. I'm your younger brother." Harry sneered. "Sorry, we're not related. I don't want to have a brother like you." Michaela's mother didn't want to be humiliated. She said angrily, "Go to your room, you're an embarrassment. You all bully me." Howie started to cry. He wiped his tears and ran into his room. No one was fooled by his act. They know he didn't care about Harry or Michaela, he just wanted money. Howie's parents were realists. They understood that Harry wouldn't want Howie anywhere near him. They thought they had a better chance for fame and fortune than Howie. Even if all they got was a sum of money for raising Michaela, they'd be happy. "Harry, ignore him. He's a child. He doesn't know what he's doing. Don't take it to heart. Let's continue to talk about the money you owe us," Howie's father said with a worried face. Mueller came to his senses and joined the conversation. He had been in shock, thinking that Michaela and Harry were a couple, and he would have to fight for Michaela's love. But after listening to the whole story, he realized that Michaela could still be his bride. He'd only have to pay Harry instead. He was happy to not deal with Michaela's parents and younger brother ever again. He figured that Harry would accept his proposal because he knew how rich families operated. They would marry each other and form alliances. Mueller would marry Michaela, bringing his family into Harry's family. A marriage between two powerful families was the best way to form an alliance. Mueller didn't care that Michaela had a different mother than Harry. He would be happy enough to be part of Harry's family. These thoughts flashed through his mind as Mueller slammed the table and stood up. He had to act. Mueller leaped into the air, hugged Harry's thigh, and started shouting, "Oh, Harry, I wasn't thinking and said some outrageous things. Now I know that I was wrong. Please forgive me." Harry was stunned. "Are you crazy too? Let go of me. Who are you apologizing to?" Harry said helplessly. Mueller did not give up. "You are my brother-in-law. Michaela is my fiancé. You are her brother, so that makes you my brother-in-law." Before the others could react, Michaela was the first to get angry. She angrily rebuked, "I never agreed to marry you." "Michaela, don't be like this. I know this marriage arrangement was quite sudden. It's understandable that you can't accept it at the moment, but please believe me, I'll make you the happiest woman in the world," Mueller said with a sincere expression. Michaela sneered. "I'll never marry a man like you." Mueller was speechless. At this time, Harry added, "You won't have to marry a man like him while I'm around." Michaela had finally met her real family. She would be safe from her greedy parents. Harry knew he would have to file paperwork to change Michaela's last name and make everything official. He was going to force Michaela to change her name if he had to. He wanted everyone to know that they were siblings and to respect her as such. It was a form of address. The Parker name carried a lot of influence, and he wanted Michaela to enjoy that kind of power. Even if their family didn't accept Michaela into their family, he would make sure that she lived her best life. However, Harry had to think for Michaela's sake. The Parker family was massive. Changing her name also kept some of his relatives from ostracizing him and Michaela. However, it was still a little early to discuss this matter. Harry would discuss it in detail with Michaela later. If she was unwilling to change her name, Harry would respect her decision. Mueller didn't stand a chance against Harry. He would have to retract his marriage proposal or face serious consequences. Michaela's family did not care about Mueller's betrothal money anymore. They knew Harry was much richer and they could probably get more money out of him instead. Michaela's mother thought it'd be best if Mueller left. "Well, Mueller, our family just learned about some wonderful news. I'm sorry, but you have to leave while we sort this out. I think we should talk about your proposal another day." When Mueller heard this, he became angry. "What do you mean? You already agreed. You can't go back on your word now." Michaela heard this and frowned. She wanted to kick Mueller out herself, but Harry pulled her back. "Don't waste your energy. Someone come kick this person out." Harry would send his men to deal with Mueller. He hated looking at him when he was groveling. Mueller was picked by Harry's guards and tossed into the dirt. Mueller finally knew that Harry was a very powerful man. He thought that he would need 10 of his own bodyguards for each one of Harry's men. Mueller was beyond angry at being treated like garbage, but he didn't dare show it in front of Harry. He needed to be respectful in front of him if he ever wanted his marriage proposal to be accepted. Mueller didn't dare to stay here any longer, so he got in his car and drove home. The multiple expensive cars and men crowding Michaela's home had attracted the attention of the whole neighborhood. Everyone was scared of the wolf guard, so they didn't get too close. They had no desire to get mixed up in whatever was happening. Nevertheless, they stood on their balconies and across the street watching and waiting for something to happen. Everyone had been out on their daily chores and noticed the cars. Once they put everything away, they came out to stand with the crowd. A few people had been wandering closer to the house. When everyone else saw that they weren't being told to leave, the larger crowd walked closer. The crowd had surrounded the building. The older people in the crowd began to gossip and wild stories could be heard. Like a game of telephone, information got passed around and misunderstood a dozen times. No one actually knew what was going on. A quiet neighborhood like this one rarely had anything noteworthy to talk about. Now that they were watching some family drama unfold, they would be able to talk about it for weeks. More people came from down the street and joined the crowd. Harry was unaware of the large crow forming outside. He was currently looking coldly at Michaela's family. You realize, I owe you nothing. I'm going to take Michaela away. You can't stop me. Harry knew Michaela wanted out of this house and would be willing to go with Harry. He didn't need to worry about her parents and their greed. Michaela's mother and stepfather did not agree. They were only interested in money. All Harry had to do was to just give them a large amount of money and they'd let Michaela go. Harry wasn't interested in bargaining with her parents. If he wanted to take Michaela away, no one could stop him. But on this matter, Harry still had some patience. Harry hadn't fully lost his temper. He was still willing to hear the amount they wanted for Michaela. When they told him that they wanted $100 million, Harry almost couldn't help but laugh. He didn't laugh because he couldn't pay them. He laughed because he thought it was such an absurd amount when he could just take her away for free. Michaela was Harry's younger sister. He had no reason to give them any money at all. They saw this as their last opportunity to make their lives tolerable. They were horribly greedy and didn't want their one chance at fortune to be taken away for free. Harry naturally wouldn't agree to this kind of insatiable amount. He rejected it without any room for negotiation. However, after arguing with her family, Harry realized that he never asked Michaela if she wanted to leave. He gently asked, Michaela, are you willing to come home with me? You can do whatever you want when you live with me. You won't even have to work if you don't want to. Michaela did not hesitate at all. Take me away. I don't want to spend another second in this house. Harry was overjoyed. He originally thought that Michaela would not be willing to leave. She made such a big decision of her life without any hesitation. He turned around and said to her mother, You heard her. Michaela has already made up her mind. So put away your disgusting greed. If you still love her, you should be happy for her. Michaela's stepfather dropped the act and showed Harry his true emotions. He said, We can't stop Michaela from leaving with you, but she is only 17. You can't legally take her. Harry looked at him with pity and laughed. You are so ignorant. That means nothing to me. What? What do you mean? Michaela's stepfather asked in shock. Harry sneered. I could easily pay off a few people and have her name changed, and then I'd be her legal guardian. Doesn't matter if you don't like it. I don't need you or her mother to agree. No, it's impossible. You must be lying to me. She can't just run away. The cops would come after her and you'd be a criminal. Michaela's stepfather still did not want to believe Harry had the power to steal his stepdaughter. Harry shook his head. He did not want to explain, nor did he have the obligation to do so. He only said with a calm tone, Money and power. Once you have it, you can do whatever you want. After hearing Harry's words, Michaela's stepfather's face turned pale. He staggered a few steps back and collapsed to the ground. He was out of his league and didn't know what else he could do. Had they been kind to Michaela and treated her with respect, they might have gotten more money than they could ever spend. Instead, they used their hatred and vitriol for their own actions against Michaela. They ruined their chances at a comfortable life because of their greed. Harry didn't want to be entangled with this family anymore. He didn't want to watch Michaela suffer any longer. He would make sure that they'd learn a harsh lesson for abusing his sister for their own personal greed. Michaela, let's leave now. What do you think? Harry asked. Michaela nodded obediently. Lead the way. Okay, is there anything else you need to pack? Michaela looked back at every corner of the house and finally became lost. Other than a few photos and books for school, there's nothing else. Michaela hated living in this house. Her parents never did anything nice for her, so she had nothing with any sentimental value in this house. Even looking at her own mother with tears in her eyes wouldn't sway her decision. She had long hated her for all the abuse she received. Since she was young, her mother did not give her much love, and Michaela did not expect to live a happy life like the children of other families. That was why she worked hard to do good in school, so she could move out as soon as possible. She needed to get into a good university. Once she did that, she would never come back. Michaela, are you really going to leave? Do you really have the heart to leave your mother? Michaela said with an expressionless face. Yes. Now that I know I have a family that actually loves me, I won't have to put up with you anymore. Her mother found it hard to accept and immediately began to feel pain. She didn't know whether it was because she really did not want Michaela to leave or because she felt sorry that she wasn't going to get the money she desperately wanted. Harry asked June to help Michaela pack her luggage. Harry looked at Michaela's shabby clothes and felt sorry for her. He said to her mother, "Now you are crying? She is your daughter and all you could ever do was blame her for your own mistakes. If I were a different man, I'd have you killed." "Forget it, don't say any more, brother, let's go." Michaela didn't want to cause any more trouble. She wanted to leave her disgusting family behind. She had no intention of seeing them ever again. The sooner they left, the happier she would be. Harry brought Michaela out of the house and across the street to the one he had rented for the year. Harry did not want to go in. There wasn't anything inside that he wanted to pack and take with him. After going down the corridor, Harry said to Michaela, "Actually, I can't just take you away. Although they did not treat you well, they kept you fed and had a roof over your head." Michaela did not mind and said, "Do whatever you think is best. June, take 2 million in cash and send it over. That's all I'll give them," Harry instructed. "Yes, sir." June nodded. She took out a suitcase from the car and went upstairs. He knew they'd be overjoyed with that amount, and they'd probably spend it all in no time. He felt disgusted giving them so much, but it was the least he could do. The crowd was gossiping even more, trying to guess what was in the suitcase. Harry and Michaela were surrounded by guards, which made them look like celebrities to the crowd. Harry couldn't help but listen to the gossip of the crowd. He immediately shouted, "You're all wrong. I'm Michaela's long-lost brother. Now that I've found her, I want to bring her home." After Harry explained himself, he continued walking with Michaela. After taking his sister into the car, the guards dispersed the crowd that was watching the show and left. A few of the crowd wanted to go up to Michaela's house and ask what had happened. The crowd wouldn't be satisfied until they heard the whole story. In Harry's car, Michaela recovered from the excitement of finally leaving her family and asked with some confusion, "Harry, where are we going? Home? I don't even know where your home is." Harry smiled and said, "You'll see soon enough. First, I need to get you caught up on the family that our father was in. The Parker family." Harry explained to Michaela the long history of their family and how they had grown their influence far and wide. The general public didn't even know that such a powerful family controlled most of the wealth in the world. They were a family that valued their privacy and only let the top 1% of the 1% know that they even existed. Harry was one of the many heirs of their family. Michaela listened to everything that Harry told her and was so shocked that her small mouth was wide open, and she couldn't close it for a long time. She really did not expect that her father was such a rich and powerful man. She wished she could have met him before he died. She thought to herself, "No wonder my mother couldn't find out where my father is." Harry looked at Michaela in silence. After a while, he could not help but ask, "Michaela, did you ever blame your father?" Michaela was puzzled. "Why'd you say that?" "I'd hate him for abandoning me and my mother." Harry sighed faintly. Harry didn't know how he'd feel if his father abandoned him. He was worried that Michaela would hold a grudge against him. He could imagine a girl like her hating her father, for the simple reason that her mother had abused her for years because she had wasted her life waiting for Harry's father. Any kid would grow up thinking their parents hated them. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been absent in her life for 17 years. Michaela listened to Harry's inquiry and lowered her head. After thinking for a while, she said sadly, "I do hate him." Harry sighed again. This was just as he had expected. Michaela could not help but hate her father. Harry could excuse it because he knew his father before he passed. He was confident that he'd come for Michaela, had he known she was his daughter. Unfortunately, Harry's father never knew about Michaela and had died not knowing she ever existed. Had he been alive, the shock would have made him go crazy. He'd stop at nothing to make sure his daughter was safe and got everything she ever wanted. Now it was fortunate that Harry could make up for it on behalf of his father. "When I was young, I often asked my mother who my dad was, where he was, but my mother never answered. Every time I asked this question, she would hit me." Michaela recalled her past memories and said. Harry nodded. Michaela smiled bitterly and said, "Later on, I didn't ask anymore. I planned on looking for myself." I heard that if I went for a gene test, I might be able to find a match. So, Harry finally understood why her DNA test ended up in their system. Michaela wanted to find her father. After the DNA test, she would be able to use her results and compare it to anyone the hospital had on file. However, the possibility of a match was incredibly small. Had June and his doctors not done such a thorough test, they'd never know that Michaela existed. Harry smiled bitterly and explained to Michaela, "You must be wondering why I disguised myself to get close to you." Michaela nodded. She thought it made more sense to just tell her the truth from the beginning. After that, Michaela asked puzzledly, "Were you afraid that I'd try to steal some kind of inheritance from you?" Harry shook his head. "Yes. Our father left me a lot in his will. Since he never knew you were born, he didn't leave anything in the will for you. I'm certain he would have left you some money if you met before he died. Seems only right I give you your share of the inheritance." Then, Michaela completely did not understand. Harry smiled. "It's confusing, I know, trust me. We'll get everything sorted out in no time. Let's change the subject." Harry didn't want to ruin his good mood by talking about his family. "All right, then where are we going now?" Michaela asked. Harry asked, "That depends on your thoughts. Do you want to go to where I live now, or to our family?" Michaela thought for a moment and said, "Can we stay here for a while longer?" The unexpected answer stunned Harry. "You still want to stay here?" Michaela shook her head and said, "No, I really want to leave, just not yet. I have to finish college entrance exams before I leave." Harry heaved a sigh of relief. He waved his hand and said, "To be honest, you don't have to take it. Our name carries a lot of weight. I can get you into any college you want. Any university would be overjoyed to have her as one of their students." This was an unspoken rule among the rich and powerful. All their kids could get into any school, for the right price, while everyone else had to study hard and hope they scored high enough on the exam to get into the university. Michaela thought she'd have to study every day and most nights just to get a chance at going to a good school. She'd never imagined it'd be so easy to get in if she was rich. However, Harry was surprised to find that Michaela did not even consider the path he had given her. "I appreciate the idea that you'd get me into any university, but I want to get in on my own merit." Michaela looked at Harry apologetically. Why? With me paving the way for you, why do you still want to take the exam?" Harry asked. Michaela smiled. "No, I just feel that after studying hard for so many years, I'd be second-guessing if I belonged at the college." Harry understood and said, "That makes sense to me." "You're agreeing with me?" Michaela was surprised. Harry was very happy. "Of course. You're my sister. As long as you make a decision, I will support you unconditionally. Even if you want the moon, I'll buy it for you," Michaela said in surprise. "Really?" Harry nodded seriously and said, "It's absolutely true." Michaela was really shocked this time. "How rich are you? Can you buy the moon?" Harry burst into laughter. He felt that his sister was a little naive and cute. "I don't have much money right now, but in the future, I'll have more than I know what to do with. I could buy the whole world for you." Hearing Harry's bold words, Michaela's heart was filled with happiness. Of course, she knew that he was only joking right now. She just wanted to enjoy the feeling of being pampered by her brother. However, what she didn't know was that what Harry said was true. When the industries that he had set up started to have an impact on the world. At that time, the wealth that Harry had accumulated would be enough to control the entire world. Perhaps in Michaela's opinion, the Parker family described by Harry was unimaginably huge. Harry no longer cared about the wealth of his family. The Parker family was big now, but Harry didn't want to rely on their wealth. No power could thrive forever. All empires of the world had fallen eventually. The Parker family had been at the top for over 100 years. Harry could see that the family was losing their position slowly, but surely. As the family had been reproducing for a long time, there were already hundreds of thousands of direct family members and millions of collateral family members. The Parker family had a large lineage. Eventually, people would get greedy and try and take it any way they could. As every house wanted to control the power of the family, it caused the competition for power to become more and more scheming and even more bloody. People's hearts were always occupied by greed, and they would always be filled with dissatisfaction. The bigger the Parker family was, the more intense and frequent the internal conflicts would be. The long-term internal conflicts would surely exhaust the strength of this family. No matter how hard the family tried, they wouldn't be able to stop it forever. The family had kept up appearances, but underneath, the family had started to decay. This was also the reason why Harry was unwilling to return after his training had ended. Even though Harry was the direct heir, he had never considered the right to control the family. He was already worried about his own empire. He didn't want to gain the responsibility of millions of people. Harry had made up his mind when he turned 21 that he would never go back to the family. With the wealth left by his father as his foundation, Harry was confident that he could create a new world by himself. No matter how good the Parker family was, Harry didn't want anything to do with it. Ever since his parents passed away in an accident, he no longer had any attachment to the family. The fact proved that Harry's choice was right. He relied on himself to create a future with unlimited hope. In fact, in Harry's subconscious mind, he even had the idea of cutting off his relationship with his family. He was no longer restricted by his family. This was what Harry had always wanted to do. Apart from obtaining the inheritance left behind by his parents, he also accepted June as his personal bodyguard. He had nothing else to do with the Parker family. But now, Harry had a younger sister. Harry had to consider that Michaela might try and go see her true family. As a member of the Parker family, she was also a direct heir. Although she was an illegitimate child, their family would still recognize her. Once it was written on the family tree, Michaela would get the funds from the family, which was what she deserved. And it was not just money. There were also status and connections that would slowly accumulate in the future. Harry knew that this was a double-edged sword. Obtaining the official recognition of the family had benefits to Michaela's status, but the drawback was that she had an additional obligation to the family on her shoulders. As a girl, the most common thing about Michaela was that she'd be appointed by the family to marry into another family. The Parker family, which was at the top of the world, was no exception to the rule that rich families married their children to form alliances, without any freedom in marriage, without any consideration for who Michaela loved. Harry had just seen Michaela run away from home to avoid this exact kind of situation. Harry did not want his sister to have to go through something like that again, so he hesitated when it came to getting the official recognition of the family. Harry still wanted to respect Michaela's decision. He would support her in whatever she decided to do. "Michaela, are you willing to be recognized and officially become a member of the Parker family?" Harry asked with a serious expression. When this question came out of her mouth, Michaela felt a little confused. With a face full of doubt, she asked, "Harry, why did you say that?" Harry hurriedly explained, "No, I didn't explain myself clearly. This matter concerns you for the rest of your life. So now you have to let me know what you think." Harry explained the details to Michaela. After a while, Michaela finally understood what Harry meant. She bit her lips and thought for a while, but she was still a little confused. I know you told me everything about them, but I don't know them and I just met you." Being poor for your whole life and then being told you could inherit billions was a lot to take in. Michaela was conflicted. She had always wanted to find her biological father, but she had never thought he would be part of the biggest family in the world. Harry had made Michaela incredibly confused. However, after Harry explained it clearly, Michaela instead felt that becoming a member of the Parker family was not something to be happy about. So she thought for a long time before saying, "Harry, I'd be happy to just live with you for a bit. I don't need to meet the rest of the family yet." Then she smiled and said, "My mother almost forced me to marry Muller. I can't just get over that so easily. If I met the family, they'd probably do the same thing my parents did." Harry heard Michaela's reply and laughed. "You're right. Now I understand what you mean. Since you don't want to be recognized by the family, then you won't have to. We can be happy together." Michaela also laughed. "I don't need much to be happy. I already feel very happy that you found me and helped me get away from my family." Harry shook his head and said, "I still have a lot planned. You're my sister and I let you suffer alone. I have to make up for the time I missed." "You don't have to do that." Michaela did not understand the weight of Harry's promise at all. She was just a child who grew up in a poor family and didn't know how wealthy Harry was. She'd be shocked to learn everything Harry was planning to do for her. She was just happy to have met him and that he was kind. Living under the constant abuse from her parents and brother, she was just happy to be away from them. Harry was watching his sister as she dealt with her internal emotions. He couldn't help but be happy she was here, but sad that she had suffered so much. He hated himself for thinking that Michaela was just trying to steal money from him. "Michaela, actually, if you want to take the college entrance examination, you don't have to stay here. I own a school that you can take it from. You can also participate in the college entrance examination." The Purple Star Academy was bought by Harry to let Kiki and Juniper go to school. Now that he had a younger sister, of course, he had to make sure she got the best education. Michaela refused his offer. I don't really want to change schools." Harry shook his head and said, "Of course not, but can you tell me the reason?" I've been there for a while and I know the best places to study. If I change schools, I'll be more focused on the vents humming than the exam. What Michaela didn't tell Harry was that she didn't want to go through the whole process of changing schools, only to go to a university shortly after the exam. She'd be leaving all her friends behind too. She knew they'd all be going to their own universities the same as her, but she didn't want to leave them so soon. Harry was going to respect her wishes. All right, then I'll stay here with you, Harry casually replied. Michaela quickly shook her head. You don't have to. Harry smiled and said, You're homeless. If I didn't stay, where would you go? Uh, Michaela paused. She really did not consider this problem. Harry said again, I don't have anything important to do either. Besides, you need to focus on your studies. I'd be happy to take care of you so you don't have to worry about what you're going to eat. Harry was more than happy to take care of Michaela. He'd never let his sister take such an important exam without supporting her. All right, it's decided then. Now we need to find a place to live. I'm not sure it would be a great idea to stay at the house across from your parents anymore, Harry said. Wait, let me search on my phone first, Harry said. What are you looking for? I'm looking for a suitable house, Harry said casually. You're going to buy a house? How much does that cost? Can't you just find a rental? Michaela said in surprise. Then she suddenly remembered something and exclaimed, Hey, are you just going to leave the house you already rented? Harry said indifferently. Why bother with that little bit of money? I remember you paid a year's rent. It's tens of thousands. How can you not stay there? Michaela's heart ached. Harry shook his head. Don't worry about it, I'm a rich man. I could have rented that house for 1,000 years and I wouldn't have lost a fraction of my money, Michaela said unhappily. Even if you have money, you can't just waste money everywhere. Michaela looked at him and felt sorry for him. Harry followed along and said, All right, then I won't let the landlord get away with it. I'll go and get the money back from him now. That's more like it. The money is yours. You can't waste it like it is nothing. Michaela saw that Harry had compromised, so she became happy again. Harry shook his head helplessly and called the landlord. Harry explained the situation and the landlord was not an unreasonable person. Instead, he happily agreed to return the money. However, there would be a reduction in the amount of money he got back. The owner had a clause in their contract that allowed him to take a portion of the rent as a deposit. Harry was happy to agree. Even Michaela's heart still ached. Her brother had been scammed out of a few $1,000s. She was annoyed that the owner would put a clause into any contract. After confirming that there was nothing wrong, he happily returned the money to Harry. However, when he transferred the money, he had just heard that Harry was Michaela's long-lost brother. He also happened to be incredibly rich. He learned the news from the old men and women that had seen Harry and Michaela leave by the motorcade. The landlord knew that Michaela's parents were mistreating her, but he couldn't do anything about it. Had he done anything to help, maybe her brother would have given him a lot of money. Look, I got my money back. You should feel at ease now. Harry showed Michaela the refund transfer on his phone. Michaela nodded. The landlord's not a bad guy, but that clause is horrible. It can't be helped. It's a legally binding contract. There is nothing I can do. Harry smiled. If I knew you were my brother, I would have not let you rent that house. It was a waste of money, she said. All right, don't worry about it. Let's go buy a new house now. We'll sell it after you finish your college entrance exam. What are you going to be looking for? Well, first of all, we can't be too far away from your school. Secondly, something that was built recently so I don't have to replace the plumbing or wiring. I think this place looks nice. Harry found a message on his phone and said, Where? Let me see. A villa? Michaela was shocked when she saw Harry's phone. Michaela was shocked when she saw Harry preparing to buy a villa. Her old house wasn't nearly as grand and had been falling apart. She couldn't imagine living in a villa, Harry said with a smile. You'll learn that money is not something you have to worry about when you're with me. I guess I'll have to get used to it at some point. Michaela bit her lips and thought for a long time before shaking her head. No, you earned your money, I can't use it. I'll make my own money, Harry said in surprise. I'm happy that you want that, but you have to take the money our father left for us. I do? I still can't accept it. After all, I didn't even know him, Michaela said with some sadness. Michaela's heart was very conflicted with Harry's father. On the one hand, she hated him for being irresponsible and abandoning her for so many years. On the other hand, she wanted to love him and have him tell her that she was loved. As for the inheritance, Michaela had never thought of inheriting it. I think I'm not qualified to inherit anything. You don't have to worry about it. Harry shook his head and said, How can that be? You deserve it. I know he'd agree with me if he were here. That, don't dwell on this matter anymore. Let's go look at the house first and buy it so we can live there as soon as possible. Otherwise, we won't have a place to sleep tonight. Harry took a fancy to the villa. It was not far from the Mountain City High School. Although it was in the Old City area, it did not mean that it was like all the dilapidated houses. This villa neighborhood had just been renovated in recent years. The houses were like new and the neighborhood was nice. Harry liked what he saw and didn't see a reason to look anywhere else. He'd buy a house in this neighborhood, if the villa he was looking at was what he wanted. Harry wasn't worried about the value of the house dropping after he bought it. Harry always left that kind of financing to Mr. Cross or some of his other employees. With Harry's investments beginning to show results, he would never have to worry about money in a million years. At that time, Harry would become the richest man in the world. He had his driver bring him and Michaela to the villa district that he was looking on. The sales office was at the entrance of the district, so it was convenient to look at the house on the spot. When Harry's motorcade stopped at the entrance of the real estate office, everyone inside was shocked. All the salespeople inside had their eyes wide open as they watched a dozen luxury cars park with their mouths wide open. At first, they thought that it was their company's CEO, but they didn't believe that he would waste that much money. They knew their boss was sensible and never tried to be so flashy. Because the car Harry rode on was a limited edition, it could not be bought on the market. All of Harry's cars were limited edition models that had been custom made from the factory. They looked expensive and were discreetly bulletproof. Harry's Wolf Guard were adamant about making sure Harry would be safe from any kind of attack. Ever since Harry was attacked the last time, his guards had been much more careful when choosing their cars. They also had Harry's car equipped with a lot of the same defenses that the President of the United States limo had. It had its own sealed cabin and air filtration system. It could effectively prevent all kinds of poisonous gas and smoke from entering. Even if it fell into the water, the entire car would not be flooded. It could support itself for a long time by relying on the circulatory oxygen supply system. The motorcade stopped and occupied the entire parking lot outside the office. All the Wolf Guard opened the doors and got out of their cars in unison. They were well trained and spread out to guard every key spot. They created a perimeter for Harry, ushering people out of the way. The security guard for the office was too scared to move. He didn't want to get in the way. Who's going to take this one? After waiting for a long time, a weak voice said, It's my turn. Hurry up and go, said one of the senior realtors. I don't dare, the meek voice said. The person who spoke was a thin man wearing glasses. Normally, he was quite confident when it came to receiving customers. But today was different. Seeing Harry's guards create such a huge commotion, he was terrified. Harry felt that he was usually quite approachable, but he had brought so many fierce guards with him wherever he went. Because of this, no one would think that Harry was easy to talk to. Most people were afraid of Harry, even though they didn't know him. Useless, stand aside. The sales manager of the sales office took the initiative. He ran out of the door to welcome Harry with a smile. After the Wolf Guard took control of the surroundings, Harry slowly got out of the car. Actually, he didn't want to go through so much trouble with all his men, but June wasn't willing to risk the chance that he could be hurt. Previously, when he disguised his identity to go to Michaela's neighborhood, he had his men scout out the area beforehand and prepare an appropriate detail to follow Harry. Only then could Harry act on his own. This time, his Wolf Guard didn't have the time to scout ahead. They needed to take control of the area quickly and efficiently. Seeing Harry step out of the car with Michaela and June, the people in the sales office were stunned. Harry was very young and very good-looking. June and Michaela were even more so. For the two of them, makeup was redundant, so they never wore it. Thus, when the three of them got out of the car and appeared in front of others, their unparalleled beauty shocked everyone. A series of gasps could be heard. They tried to figure out who Harry was. Some figured he was a celebrity that they hadn't heard of. The people in the real estate office only knew that he was rich and wanted to buy a house. Welcome, sir. How can we help you today? The manager of the sales office asked Harry with a respectful attitude. Harry said his thanks. He showed them the house he had seen on their website. This was the only house in the old city that had some quality, and it was still close to Michaela's school. He said directly, I wanted to check out this house. It's in an ideal location for me. The sales manager hurriedly nodded his head. Yes, yes, yes. Please take a seat at my desk and I can show it to you in detail. The sales manager thought that Harry was like their other high-class clientele and prepared a list of their most expensive houses in the neighborhood. Harry brushed these houses away and continued to tell the sales manager that he wanted to only see the villa he wanted. Harry took the information for the villa out of the stack. He liked what he saw. It was located in the middle of the good side of town. They were close enough downtown to be able to visit easily, but far enough away that they had plenty of space. The villa was not considered big. It only had 2 floors in total, with 3,000 square feet. It was enough for Michaela, June, and him. Harry handed the document to Michaela and asked, I like it. What do you think? Michaela carefully took the paper. After flipping through it, she softly asked, How much is it? The sales manager smiled and said, Because it is the best villa in our neighborhood, plus the interior renovation, and it is move-in ready, so in total, it's 13 million. Michaela took a deep breath. As if her hand had been scalded, she quickly put the document book on the coffee table. She said to Harry, This is too expensive. Harry waved his hand. It's only a little more than 10 million. I think it is well worth the price. But it's such a waste to live in such a big house, Michaela said with some heartache. Harry shook his head. You'll get used to living in bigger houses from now on. He wanted Michaela to live the best life she possibly could. Harry had never focused on spending money on himself. He felt that Michaela had suffered enough for one life, and he could spoil her as much as he wanted. Michaela looked at the luxuriously renovated sales office again, then looked at Harry's loyal guards outside the window. She finally understood in her heart that her life was now going to be very different from what she used to know. You have to learn to get used to these things. You still have a long way to go in the future. You'll learn to make friends and how to spend your time, Harry said with a smile. He turned to the manager of the sales office and said, Take us to see the house. The sales manager thought they'd have to work a little harder to get Harry to buy a house. He stood up and said, No problem. I'll take you to see the house now. The sales office had a tour car which the manager used to bring guests to the neighborhood. It wasn't meant to go at high speeds. June originally did not want Harry to take this kind of simple car, but Harry felt that it didn't matter, so he brought Michaela along. Entering the neighborhood, Harry felt that the environment inside was not bad. The developer they had hired did fantastic work. Luckily, they found a developer that wasn't a fraud. The plants were all expensive species and were often modified and protected by certain companies. The road was well maintained, with not a hole in sight. Sitting in the car, he did not feel the slightest bit of a bump. Harry could even see squirrels and rabbits bouncing around the gardens. Harry was happy to see them, and Michaela was ecstatic to see the cute animals. They went around the lake and arrived in front of the house that Harry wanted to see. This was a vintage villa. The structure was old, but it had been modified with modern amenities. Harry was satisfied just by looking at the exterior, but he still had to ask Michaela how she felt. What do you think? It's too extravagant. Do you really want to buy it? Michaela asked carefully. Harry smiled and said, Let's go in and take a look first. Just by looking at the outside of the house, they could not see anything. They had to look at the decoration inside to decide whether they should buy it or not. Of course, Harry's heart had already settled on the villa. He would wait for Michaela's input before he bought the house. The sales manager didn't say anything on the ride to the villa. He understood the mentality of their high-class customers. It was better to say less than to say more. He just quietly stood to the side and watched as Harry inspected the villa. After entering the villa, Harry could tell it looked the same as in the information book he looked at in the sales office. It was kept very clean and tidy. After looking around, Harry felt very satisfied. He didn't like the name of the neighborhood. He thought the developer was good. The house looked great, both inside and out. He liked the location, and Michaela didn't seem interested in voicing her opinion. Therefore, Harry decided to buy this house. Harry felt satisfied. As for Michaela, she never wanted him to make the decision. To be honest, after entering the villa, Michaela also liked the arrangement inside. Do you think it's okay? If you like it, then I'll buy it, Harry asked. It's pretty good. It's just that I feel like it's a bit of a waste to leave after only staying here for a few weeks, Michaela said with pity. After the college entrance examination, she would choose a university in another city. When she graduated from that university, she wouldn't come back to her home city. Michaela guessed that she'd be with Harry for a while till he decided she should live on her own, or if he was going to start a family and needed his space. Harry smiled. It's nothing. If you fall in love with this house, I can just build one just like this for you wherever you want to live. Harry was kidding. He knew Michaela would grow accustomed to her new high-class life and would hate to live in a dingy villa like the one he was planning to buy. I have no idea what I'll do in the future, Michaela said in embarrassment. Harry waved his hand and said to the sales manager, All right, let's buy this villa then. We can worry about it later. The sales manager smiled so hard that the corner of his mouth almost split to his ears. This house was not the most expensive in the city. Their neighborhood was in an all-right location, but it wasn't favorable for most people who were working in the new city. A lot of people were looking at moving to the new city, so the sales office saw a large decrease in sales. He was overjoyed to see someone want to buy a house in their neighborhood. They had only looked at it for a few minutes, but they had already decided to buy it. The sales manager was envious of this quick decision. On his salary, he had to budget his money carefully, or he'd be unable to pay his mortgage. The sales manager was even more friendly to Harry than to anyone he had ever met before. The few of them returned to the sales office and immediately signed the contract to buy the house. Without waiting for the official procedures to be completed, Harry got the keys to the villa. The sales manager was very enthusiastic. Even though Harry had already paid for the house, he was still riding the adrenaline he got from selling a house so quickly. The manager ordered his staff to bring out a bunch of gifts from the sales office and send them to the villa. Harry was all right with the gifts. They were mostly some nice teas and coffee as well as some other artisan gifts. The sales office used gift baskets to make their new homeowners feel welcome. With these gifts, Harry did not have to go out to buy food for a few days. The sales manager was trying to please Harry, so he would tell his rich friends to buy houses in his neighborhood. Harry was well aware that the sales manager was trying to attract more buyers. Unfortunately, Harry wasn't interested in staying for long. However, it wasn't good to reject other people's good intentions. Besides, he had already bought a house worth more than $10 million. He was fine with the gifts. He hated that the sales manager was trying so hard to convince him to tell his friends about the neighborhood. After half an hour, the sales staff left, and Harry and Michaela were now in their new home. The sales staff began to talk to each other. They were amazed at how easy Harry was to talk to. The people in the sales office were talking about Harry, while Harry was happily setting up his new home with his sister. Harry did a more thorough inspection for things he might want to replace or fix, but found nothing. He still needed to get some daily necessities, but he could just have his men do it. Harry remembered that he had bought most of the clothing store downtown. He instructed his men to load up the delivery truck and drive it to their new home. Harry, what present? Michaela asked in puzzlement. I got you some gifts to celebrate our reunion, Harry replied with a smile. Really? You're too nice to me. What did you get me? Michaela asked happily. Harry shook his head. I can't tell you, that'd ruin the surprise. Michaela nodded happily. She had never gotten many gifts from her family. However, when Michaela saw the truck parked in front of the villa and the delivery van unloaded beautiful gift boxes one after another, he waited until Michaela saw the truck parked in front of the villa. She asked Harry in surprise, Is that the gift? Yes. There's so much. It can't all be for me. Michaela pointed at the guards and spoke. Harry instantly smiled. Of course, it's all for you. No way, this is too much. Michaela looked at the countless gift boxes and suddenly felt happy and dizzy. Michaela didn't intend to reject Harry's generous gift. However, she thought Harry would only give her something small. She would have never guessed he would give her so much. Michaela covered her mouth in shock. She only felt that Harry treated her too well. Unfortunately, she had lived in poverty since she was young. She would have been happy with just a small gift. Seeing the brand logo, Michaela jumped for joy. She was ecstatic to see that all of these pretty clothes would be hers. She had been quite confused when she saw the truck with the Audrey logo arrived. She didn't need to see what was inside the gift boxes to know what was inside. Michaela knew how expensive every piece of clothing was. She couldn't believe her eyes at how many packages came out of the truck. A few of the sales staff saw the Audrey truck come through the front gate. The eyes of the saleswomen turned red. They'd seen many delivery trucks come in and out of the neighborhood, but never saw an Audrey truck stop to deliver hundreds of packages. The saleswomen were turning green with envy. They had to turn their eyes away. If they kept looking, their hearts would shatter. Michaela kept opening box after box. Her hands began to tremble from all the gifts she had opened. Harry, there's no way I'll be able to wear all of this. Can June have some of them? Michaela said. June was Harry's bodyguard. He was fine with her wearing more girly outfits. He'd even told her that she could wear whatever she wanted. June declined. She preferred clothes that she could move freely in. June knew her place. Even though she knew Harry wouldn't mind, she had to discipline herself or she'd get weak. Harry didn't hate Michaela's idea. He smiled and said, "It's up to you. Anyway, these are all yours. You don't need to ask me who you want to give them to." June shook her head. "I don't need them." Ever since she came here to stay, June gradually changed her way of addressing Michaela. Harry was her employer. Since he had already recognized Michaela's identity, she deserved just as much respect. Michaela still thought of June as an older sister. She didn't like that she was essentially in charge of June. She pulled June's hand. "Please, there's no way I can wear all these clothes. If you take some, we can dress up together." June looked at Harry. Harry smiled and nodded. "She's being nice, you should accept. You don't have to wear them all the time." "Okay, but actually I don't usually need these," June said. "We'll just have to go to some parties so you can wear them. Come, let's open the gift boxes together." Michaela smiled and spoke. She really didn't care about giving half of the gifts to June. Michaela could tell June wanted to be more of a girly girl. She could tell that she loved Harry, and that Harry loved her back. They both had feelings for each other but didn't act on them. Michaela knew June wished she could change who she was for Harry. She lived with that regret and put it away so she could do her job. Since June was the person closest to Harry, she knew everything. Michaela was sensible, even though she had inherited an insane amount of wealth. She didn't change her attitude toward other people. She didn't feel the need to belittle others because of her wealth. She treated Harry's subordinates the same way she would treat anyone. Harry naturally felt gratified by his sister, who had a good heart and treated people nicely. Harry was happy that Michaela was a sweet girl. He would have hated finding out his own sister was a horrible person. He definitely wouldn't be willing to live with her if that was the case. Michaela was empathetic at heart. It would never matter how much money she had. She'd treat everyone she met with respect. Michaela should have gone to school today, but because of everything that happened, she was going to miss a day. Michaela informed the school and told her teachers she'd be home for the day. Her teachers unanimously told her that they knew she'd be busy and wouldn't be able to come to school. When she disappeared last night, her teacher called her home and learned all about her long-lost brother and how she had left home. Her teachers were worried that Michaela would miss out on an important day and ruin her chances of passing the college entrance exams. It was rare that the school would accept a student missing a day during an important time of year. However, Michaela was different. She was serious about her studies and always scored top of her classes. Her teachers got together and agreed to allow Michaela the day off, knowing it was a one-time deal. It was rare that she could not go to school. Missing one day wouldn't ruin her chances at success. Harry suggested that he bring Michaela out to play for the day to relax. Michaela happily agreed. They bought the villa, but they still needed to buy a lot of daily necessities. They decided to go to the store to get what they needed. Harry and Michaela were driven directly to the new city shopping center. All the best stores were here. They arrived at the busiest commercial street in the new city district. Harry looked at the time and saw that it was already noon. He remembered that he and Michaela had forgotten to eat breakfast. Harry didn't care what they ate. He wouldn't be picky. Today he wanted Michaela to pick whatever she wanted. "What do you want to eat? You can choose all the restaurants and hotels on this street," Harry said with a smile. Michaela stood and looked around. When she found a hamburger restaurant not far away, her eyes lit up. Harry obviously noticed the change in her eyes. He looked over and saw that she was looking at a fast food restaurant. Harry was a little puzzled. He thought she'd pick something a bit nicer now that she could afford it. Instead, she chose a place she had been to before her mother started hating her. "Harry, I've been thinking about eating a hamburger and potato chips since I was a kid." Michaela's eyes became downcast as she spoke. Michaela was mistreated at home, while some people saw fast food as a once-a-week treat. Michaela had only ever been once in her life. She had dreamed of going back many times. When Michaela was old enough to work, she'd take some part-time jobs and try to save her money. With her parents not paying for her school, she could never save enough to go to her favorite restaurant. Harry saw his sister's sad look and understood that she would rather have this than anything else in the world. There was a knot in Michaela's heart. Harry felt that he should break it for her today. If his sister wanted to eat a hamburger, then she'd eat it. "If you want a hamburger, then let's go." Harry smiled and pulled Michaela with him. Because they were going to go shopping on the commercial street, Harry had the car parked in a place far away from the main street, so they didn't attract much attention. Harry wanted a nice outing with his sister. He'd hate to have to cut it short because a mob of people wanted to stop and talk to him. June, come with us. Harry turned his head and spoke. All right, I'll let the others know what is happening, June responded. Then she let the wolf guard who were following them in the distance secretly mix in the crowd to protect Harry. In this way, they wouldn't attract too much attention. Harry brought Michaela and June into the fast food restaurant. They had come in during the lunch rush. The tables were filled with people eating, and the counter had a line of people who were all ordering. From the looks of it, it would take a long time for Harry and the other two to get their order in and eat it in a reasonable amount of time. Michaela said with some hesitation, "There are a lot of people here. Why don't we go somewhere else?" Harry saw the reluctance in Michaela's eyes and smiled. "It's fine. Anyway, we still have time today. We can wait." "I've got us a table," June indicated. Coincidentally, there was a person sitting on the seat next to them who was about to leave. June quickly took up the seat. Harry hated being in this kind of situation. Life in this big city was fast-paced. Eating a meal was like fighting a war, making him nervous. The regular hustle and bustle of city life was something Harry despised. Work in the big city was stressful, especially downtown in the corporate offices. All kinds of office workers would come down for lunch. This would cause a large influx of people that would crowd the streets and all the restaurants. Every restaurant and fast food place would have a line out the door during rush hour. Harry was used to eating at better restaurants or having chefs cook for him and his guests. He preferred to enjoy his meal rather than be forced to eat quickly so he could go back to work. He didn't envy these corporate workers. After the three of them occupied their seats, they finally didn't have to struggle to stand anymore. Harry got up and said, "I'll go get our order in. You guys stay here." June stopped Harry and said, "I should do it." Harry shook his head and said, "It'd be rude to let a lady stand in line while I got to sit down." June was in a dilemma. Seeing that she was in a dilemma, Harry smiled. "Don't worry about it. Just sit." As he spoke, he told June to sit on the chair and went to line up to order food. Although Harry and the other two had tried their best to keep a low profile when they arrived, they still attracted the attention of everyone in the restaurant. Harry told Michaela to change into the clothes and shoes that he had bought for her. Even June had changed under Harry's request. She wore the clothes Michaela had given her. June and Michaela were used to being watched quietly, so they did not feel uncomfortable. At this time, the two of them were happily chatting. Michaela had been asking June all kinds of questions, trying to find out more about Harry. June couldn't tell her everything, but she could tell her everything they had done together since she became his bodyguard. Michaela giggled at all the stories she was being told. The fast food restaurant was filled with men from the surrounding offices. They were avid people watchers and had been staring at June and Michaela. They considered themselves lucky to be able to have lunch and see such beautiful women. It distracted them from their otherwise boring lives stuck in front of a computer in a sea of cubicles. Many people began to question why they were stuck in their boring routines and not enjoying their lives. Harry stood in the queue and heard the whispers from the crowd. He secretly laughed in his heart. His sister and June were being watched by so many people. Harry laughed to himself that his family was the center of attention. He considered himself very lucky that he had all the money he could ever want and was surrounded by beautiful women. Harry thought that had he not inherited all his parents' money, he'd be just like one of these corporate drones. He'd be consumed by his work, living the same boring day over and over again. He'd also be so bored that seeing a beautiful woman would be the highlight of his day. Harry frowned. The discussions of these people slowly changed, and they started making up rumors about who the two beautiful women were. Harry thought it was fine to speculate in their head, but he'd heard of a few of them making up wild hypotheticals that made no sense and were insulting. Harry wouldn't let some lowlives disparage his family. Harry couldn't help himself. The few people who spoke badly about June and Michaela were sitting not far away from him. Although they were talking quietly, Harry heard them clearly. He couldn't hold it in for a moment and reached out to grab a plate. He smacked it across the gossipers' heads. The plate was dirty and still had food on it, leaving a mess on the men Harry had attacked. They were furious, asking Harry all kinds of questions. Harry didn't want to answer these horrible people. He smiled coldly and said, "Don't talk about my family like that." They were stunned for a moment. They didn't understand what Harry meant. But then they understood. They had talked so brazenly just now. They never imagined anyone would actually hear them. For a moment, they were all extremely embarrassed. It wasn't until they realized their clothes were stained, and then their embarrassment turned to anger. "I don't care who you are. How dare you attack me? The man who spoke had his friend frantically pulling on his shirt to get him to stop talking. What? We can take this kid. He needs to know not to mess with people. Stop talking, his companion said anxiously. What? It was only at this moment that the man noticed that the clothes Harry was wearing were pretty fancy. They looked very expensive. Harry had also been wearing a Rolex model that hadn't been sold for a couple of years and was incredibly valuable. All the collectors wished they could get their hands on it. It would go for auction at a minimum of $10 million. They knew a man that could spend $10 million on a watch, had more money than they would ever see. The angry man sat back down, realizing that he couldn't afford to make Harry angry. Luckily, they did not attack Harry. Harry was happy that he didn't send anyone to the hospital today. June saw that something had happened and quickly ran over. The wolf guard that were following Harry had taken a couple of steps to make sure Harry was okay. What happened? June asked with concern. She then used a sharp gaze to look at these few people. Such a cold and murderous gaze made their legs tremble in fear. Harry shook his head. It's fine. I just didn't like their faces. Harry didn't want to explain what they had been saying about her and Michaela. June naturally didn't think too much about it. She took Harry at his word. Then what do you want to do with them? June asked. You don't have to worry about it. Just go sit with Michaela. Harry looked at Michaela. After saying that, he told the two gossipers to leave. They saw that Harry did not continue to pursue the matter. When they were outside, they let out a long breath, happy that they could get out of that situation with their lives. Harry didn't expect them to actually leave so quickly. He had no idea that they knew how expensive his watch was at a glance. He'd never guessed that the workers were scared of his wealth and not his threatening demeanor. It took Harry a minute to realize that they had been staring at his watch before they lost their will to fight. No wonder they left in a hurry. Harry thought to himself, if they could tell how much his watch was, then they probably figured out that he was rich. The scuffle was short. Everyone in the restaurant looked over and then went back to their meals. Everyone was very busy and no longer cared about what happened. They all started to eat and drink again. They didn't have time to worry about other people's problems. They had a small amount of time to eat before they'd have to go back to work. Harry knew they worked long hours and generally lived very stressful lives. He thought of his own businesses. Harry was happy that he had kept his people in mind when he ran his companies. He gave them ample rest and a lot of employee vacation time, even if they had to work overtime because of some unforeseen circumstances. Harry would also pay 3 times the normal rate for overtime, but he didn't want his employees to work too hard. As for salary and treatment, Harry paid his employees well over the average. He had even given his employees houses on his private island. There weren't many bosses in the world who could afford to treat their employees so well. Harry knew a lot of CEOs could afford to do what Harry does, but they were greedy and happier to fill their own pockets. Harry never cared about taking a large portion of the profits. He'd rather pay his employees well. Harry had been preparing to make a global monopoly. His profits would skyrocket, and his employees would reap the benefits. Harry had forgotten the two men in no time at all. Very soon, it was Harry's turn to order. He began to notice that the restaurant became less crowded. A lot of seats were empty. Harry chuckled. All the commotion was over as fast as it began. He thought it was silly that he almost had to fight for a table. Michaela, June, come over and see what you want to eat. Harry waved his hand and greeted them. June naturally had no objections and obediently walked over. Michaela was timid but followed closely behind June. To her, she had been looking forward to this meal for 10 years. In the past, she used to envy others. Now she could finally satisfy this small wish. Of course, she was extremely excited. However, when Michaela looked at the variety of dishes on the menu, she became confused. What should I order? Michaela couldn't make up her mind. Harry couldn't decide either, so he looked at the first meal on the menu. He could only say, order the hash one meal. If you don't like it, you can always come back and get something different. Michaela smiled and nodded. Sounds good to me. As she spoke, she ordered a meal. When she finished ordering, Harry saw June standing by the side in a daze and did not seem to have ordered anything. June, what are you thinking about? Why don't you order? Harry asked. June was a little embarrassed and said, I've never been here before, so I don't know what to get. Harry felt his heart ache. He felt sorry for these two girls. June hadn't been abused like Michaela, but becoming part of the family guard came with its restrictions. From a young age, until she became Harry's guard, she practiced hard. It was imaginable how much she had suffered at such a young age. The only thing he knew was that the people who became family guards were some of the best in the world. Most people that tried to join the guard either made it or died trying. Harry's heart ached for June, and he didn't want her to choose for herself. He said, I think this looks pretty good. Why don't we get this? June's face instantly turned red, and she stammered, I'm happy with whatever you pick. Michaela, who was watching from the side, smiled and ate. She felt that June was usually much better at controlling her emotions. She never thought she'd see her act so bashful. Soon their order was called, and they all sat down to eat. There were not many people left in the store. It was the same down the whole street. Harry did not like the noisy environment when he ate, so he was much happier now. June and Harry ate their meals. June tried her best to cover her mouth like she was embarrassed being seen eating. It's just a meal. What's there to be embarrassed about? Harry smiled. I'm used to eating on my own, June suddenly said. Harry was stunned for a moment, then he said helplessly, I don't need you to protect me now. You can eat in peace. What are you worried about? As Harry's personal bodyguard, June was not allowed to eat with Harry at the same time. She could be distracted, and Harry could be injured. Furthermore, as Harry's closest guard and the last line of defense, June would not allow herself to be careless. Harry knew why she was embarrassed, but thought he had explained why the way she thought was silly. June had been with him for a while. She knew that he was different from other rich men. After comforting June a few times, she could finally let go of her worries and ate without worry. Eat slowly. A girl needs to be more ladylike when eating, Harry said helplessly. June quickly admitted her mistake. Sorry. Harry was speechless. Michaela, who was watching from the side, couldn't help but tease. Harry, it sounds like you're talking about me, Harry said jokingly. You're right. If anything, Michaela eats like an animal. June's face turned red again. She quickly picked up the burger and covered her face with the wrapping paper. They chatted as they ate. Michaela suddenly changed the topic to herself and asked Harry, Harry, should I change my last name? Harry didn't understand. Change your name? Why? Michaela said, we have the same father. Shouldn't I change it to his? Oh, actually, I don't really care about it. If you want to change it, we can change it, Harry said casually. Harry didn't care if she wanted to change her last name or not, but if she wanted to enter the family, she would definitely have to change her surname to Parker. If she changed her name, the family would be after her. He didn't want to worry Michaela about everything that was coming her way. The normal way to change a name was a long bureaucratic process. Most people had to have a really good reason to change their name. They'd have to provide multiple documents. Harry had plenty of connections. It'd be as easy as just speaking that he could change Michaela's name. But now Michaela needed to participate in the college entrance examination. When that was over, he would have to get registered as her legal guardian. After Michaela went to college, he could change her surname. It'd be better to wait till then to change it to avoid any confusion. Michaela was only kind of worried about the matter and was in no hurry to change it. After the three of them finished eating, they returned to the commercial street to stroll around. Harry didn't like to go shopping, and in fact he hated wandering around aimlessly. He needed a destination. Harry was trying his best to relax with his sister. He didn't feel that anything was wrong, but he hated feeling the way he did. He was happy but bored at the same time. After all, this was Harry's first time shopping with his sister. He was happy to finally be able to spend time with his sister. Michaela was used to being thrifty. She didn't have anything that she wanted to buy especially. She already had more clothes than she ever had before because of Harry. June was even more impossible to shop for. She only accompanied Harry outside and wouldn't even look for anything to buy. Therefore, Harry, June, and Michaela went straight to the streets and didn't buy anything. But they weren't bored at all. Harry was happy to see that Michaela was happy. Michaela also felt the same way. She was happy hanging out with her older brother. Even if she didn't buy anything, she would still be happy. She wished she wanted something. She felt bad dragging Harry around. Michaela hadn't been to the new city district before. She hadn't ever been to the shopping district because she thought she'd be sad knowing that she couldn't buy anything. Now that she was here, everything she saw filled her with wonder. She felt like she was on vacation and hadn't come to the new city to shop. Despite only being on the other side of town, she felt like she had gone on a long trip and arrived at her vacation destination. Michaela happily walked in and out of the various shops. Seeing the dazzling variety of goods, Michaela was fully satisfied. Harry had been into a few of the shops, and when he saw something he liked, he bought it. He was thinking about how they were going to stay in the city for a while, so he was preparing their new home for their short stay. All the small bits and pieces that made a home were important, and Harry didn't want anything to ruin his time with his sister. Harry hadn't realized he had bought too much, but his arms were covered in bags. Michaela, I don't think I can carry any more, Harry suggested. Okay, let's put everything in the car. Michaela smiled. The three of them returned to the place where they parked the car. It was a parking lot by the side of the commercial street. Harry's car was parked on the riverbank. When he passed by a drink stall by the side of the road, Harry bought 3 cold drinks. The three of them had walked back and forth on a hot day, and now they were all sweating. After putting the things into the car, they went to the lounge chair under the shade of a tree and sat down to rest for a while. Michaela took the cold drink that Harry handed her and drank it little by little. When she raised her head to look at the other side of the river, her eyes glazed over for a moment. Harry asked, "What's wrong?" Michaela looked at the tall Ferris wheel on the opposite bank and was lost in it for a moment. She did not hear what Harry said. Harry followed her gaze and smiled. "What? You want to go to the amusement park?" Michaela was a little embarrassed and said, "Forget it. You and June must be tired because of me." Harry said, "It's fine. We have only walked a few steps. There's still time today. If you want to go, I can take you." Michaela really wanted to go. She had wanted to go to the amusement park since she was young and see how fun it would be to go on all the rides. She'd never been before, and it was another one of her silly little dreams. Now that Harry understood what she was thinking, he would be happy to take his sister on all the rides she wanted. But then again, Harry had never been to an amusement park since he was young. He had been to one before, but it was a little different than the one in town. It was a private amusement park belonging to the Parker family. Only the children of the Parker family were able to go in and play. They had the best rides and games. Harry thought it was missing something when all he'd see were a couple of kids instead of the 100 or so that would normally be going to the amusement park. He couldn't share his happiness with everyone else at the same time. All he wanted was to see more people happy and share his happiness with them. Harry stopped going when he realized he wasn't going to see any new faces. Harry had never been to a normal amusement park because his family deemed it unsafe. There were too many risks that his family wasn't willing to take when they took out their kids. Another reason was that his family didn't want anyone to learn who their family was. He felt sad every time he saw an amusement park and knew he couldn't go to it. When he thought about how his sister was even more miserable than him, Harry felt extremely sad. Compared to his own experience, Michaela was much more miserable. Without any hesitation, he pulled Michaela's hand. "Let's go to the amusement park." Because they were on the other side of the river, they needed to go across the bridge in the distance. Harry went back to the car and drove across the bridge. The other guards naturally had to follow them. They followed at a distance, doing their best to not attract any unwanted attention. Harry and the others arrived at the entrance of the amusement park. It was huge and seemed to go on forever. There were lines of tourists everywhere. Harry had figured that the owner of the amusement park had to be very smart. Being able to build a large park in the middle of a new and developing city had to have cost a fortune. It was the afternoon and the park closed in a few hours. Michaela didn't have a lot of time to see the whole park. Harry didn't want to waste his time on useless queuing. He looked at the endless line of tourists. Harry frowned, thinking about how he could get around them. He didn't want to make everyone angry, but he didn't want to wait in line. He needed a way to use his wealth and influence to get to the front of the line without angering everyone else. Just as Harry was in a dilemma, a man wearing a hat sneakily came up to him. The Wolfguard guards around Harry had seen him long before Harry did. These people were responsible for Harry's safety. They'd never let anyone get close to Harry. The man was only a few feet behind Harry before the undercover Wolfguard surrounded him. "What are you doing?" Before this man could finish his words, the guards covered his mouth and took him away. "Take him to someplace quiet. I want to know why he was sneaking up on Mr. Parker," June instructed the wolf guard. "Understood." Harry saw all of this, but he wasn't worried. He trusted his men with his life. He was happy to let them do their job. Just as Harry was thinking about how to cut the lines, one of his guards came back with a smile on his face. The man was just selling tickets at a marked-up price. Harry said casually, "A scalper? All right, let him go then." But after saying that, he said, "Wait, he's got tickets? Quickly bring him to me." "Okay." Wolfguard received the order and left. Harry immediately became happy. Now he didn't have to worry about upsetting the people in line. He'd always hated people who bought stuff only to turn around and sell it for more than twice what they paid for it. It was a slimy way to do business. Harry watched happily as the scalper was brought to him. The man had a puzzled look on his face and he was trembling with fear. He thought he had been caught by the police or something and was going to be thrown in jail. Now that he was brought in front of Harry, he had no idea what was going on. Harry asked in an amiable manner, "You've got tickets?" The man said in fear, Yes." "How many?" Harry asked. The man carefully took out a package from his pocket and showed it to Harry. Harry looked at it. There were quite a lot of tickets inside. Looking at the long line of tourists, Harry was happy. "I want 100 tickets. How much?" Harry asked. The man was surprised. He'd never been asked for more than a handful of tickets at a time. On his best day, the man sold to a tour group that had been booked last minute, and they only had 23 people. He stood at the door all day and didn't even dare to go to the toilet. With this kind of devotion, he'd be able to sell all his tickets in a day. Business was booming. "How much do you want?" 100 tickets. Hurry up and tell me the price. I don't have time to waste with you," Harry said impatiently. He wanted to bring Michaela and June in. Knowing his guards would freak out, he needed to buy them tickets as well. He didn't want to waste any time, but Harry thought the scalper was an idiot. The man had thought Harry was joking. He couldn't imagine why Harry would want 100 tickets. Harry was standing in front of his luxury car, and Michaela was sitting in it. The man finally understood that Harry was a rich man, and he began to inflate his prices in his head. After a quick calculation in his heart, he tried to give a price. 200 per ticket. Harry smiled. "You're trying to rip me off." The ticket price for the amusement park was $50 per person. The ticket seller opened his mouth and said $200, which was 4 times the normal price. Harry knew he was being swindled. Harry didn't care about money, but he hated scammers. Harry knew he'd be paying more than the normal price, but 4 times the normal amount was ridiculously high. "I'll give you another chance. Think long and hard about what you want to sell them for." After Harry finished speaking, his guards got a little closer to the man. The man felt threatened by the huge men that were towering over him. He quickly wiped away the sweat on his forehead and said with a flattering smile, "I'm sorry I misspoke. $60 each." $10 over the normal ticket price was more reasonable. Only then did Harry nod his head. Harry pointed, "Pay the man." June took out a stack of cash and started counting out the $6,000 for the tickets. The man was happy to get a large stack of cash all at once. He was kind of angry that he didn't get to sell the tickets for his usual price. He hid his anger. He didn't want Harry to get upset and just take the tickets from him. He could only nod at the money with a bitter smile. He handed 100 tickets to Harry. "I still have a few diamond VIP tickets here. Do you want them?" The man couldn't help but ask. Normal tickets got people the basic pass to go on the rides and to play some of the games in the park. A VIP ticket gave people a different pass that let them into special lines with less of a wait. They could eat for free at any of the stalls and much more. Harry said impatiently, "Why didn't you say so earlier? Yes, I want them." "Sorry, I didn't think you'd want to pay for them." Usually, VIP tickets were $150 per ticket. The scalper didn't want to make Harry or his men angry. Harry wanted 3 tickets for Michaela, June, and himself. He didn't care what price he'd have to pay. His guards could use the ordinary tickets. It wasn't like they were going to go on any of the rides. After buying the tickets, Harry sent the man away and brought his sister into the amusement park. He was slightly worried that the tickets were fake. In that case, he would have his men beat up the scalper and make sure he never tried scamming anyone ever again. Past the gate, Harry could hear all the rides and people screaming with joy. "All right, what do you want to do first?" Harry turned his head and asked Michaela. "It all looks like so much fun. I don't even know where to start." Michaela couldn't decide. She had dreamed about going to the amusement park since she was young, but she never imagined she'd get to go inside or on any of the rides. She had figured she'd know which ride she wanted to go on the moment she stepped inside the park. Harry laughed to himself. He knew Michaela was overwhelmed, so he smiled. "Let's walk around and see which one looks the most fun." "Okay," Michaela agreed. This amusement park was very big, and there were all kinds of things to do. They had a kids section and a few adult-only sections. Michaela was 17 now, but Harry thought it would be fun if they started with some of the kids' activities. So he took her to play with the bumper cars, the merry-go-round, and so on. Michaela played to her heart's content, but soon discovered that it was all children who played a lot, so she began to feel embarrassed. "Let's play something else. These are things that children play." Harry naturally did not have any objections. He smiled. All right, then let's play some more exciting games. As he said that, he pointed at the pirate ship and the jump machine in the distance. Michaela swallowed and said guiltily, Okay, but you have to come with me. Harry nodded. Are you scared to go alone? Who's scared? I just feel that it wouldn't be fun to go alone. Michaela refused to admit that she was scared. The pirate ship and the jumping machine were fun to play with. Harry had gone on these rides before, and he remembered how much fun he had. He pulled June and said, Let's go together. After they were laughing and screaming, Harry and Michaela were completely pale. They sat on the chair and finally recovered from the shock. Michaela looked at June, who was completely calm. June, did you not get scared? June said with an expressionless face. What is there to be afraid of? I've been through worse. Harry shook his head helplessly. Michaela, don't mind her. June is fearless. June had been trained to skydive. A small ride that she knew was safe, wouldn't even raise her heart rate. However, Michaela didn't believe it. How can you be completely fearless? June, you have to be afraid of something. Harry thought for a while and felt that what Michaela said made sense. He turned his head and asked, June, she's right. You have to have one fear. June looked up at the sky and thought for a while before shaking her head. No, I don't think there is anything that can scare me. Harry gave up and looked at Michaela. I guess our family's training is incredibly rigorous. She might really not be afraid of anything. Michaela still shook her head. That doesn't matter. You can't train someone to be fearless. Let's go to the Castle of Terror. I'm sure that'll work. Harry and June looked over at the same time. The so-called Castle of Terror was a haunted house. It was a must-see event in the amusement park. The haunted house was geared to only adults, so kids weren't allowed. Harry's eyes lit up. I think that'd be fun. June, don't you want to give it a go? June smiled and said, Why not? I know none of it's real. Harry immediately decided. All right, then let's go and have some fun. Harry felt that June wouldn't be afraid, but it was hard to say what would happen to Michaela. He had no idea how well Michaela handled jump scares. She looked excited to go, so maybe she would enjoy herself. The three of them had a new goal and immediately got up and went over to the haunted house. Because they had a VIP ticket, they didn't need to queue outside. After showing their passes, the staff let them in. However, before entering, the staff still mentioned some precautions and reminders. Those who had health concerns and couldn't be frightened weren't recommended to enter. If there were any problems, the park wouldn't be held responsible. They had spent a lot of money on the haunted house. Nothing looked cheap, and it looked truly scary. Just looking at the castle from the outside made it look extremely terrifying. The theme of the haunted house was that there was an evil wizard inside the castle who liked to capture many innocent people to conduct cruel magic experiments. The wizard created many frightening creatures and ghosts that would attack the park guests. As for the tourists who entered, each of them would be given a special sword that they could use to defend themselves. The foam sword had a chip inside it to unlock doors and indicate that it had slain a monster. The whole haunted house was a large game. The guests would have to complete puzzles and slay monsters to get to the top and defeat the wizard. Once they did that, the sword would light up, and they could get a special prize. Harry and the other two brought their swords into the castle. They started searching the first floor and began solving puzzles one by one, ascending the castle as they went. Inside the castle was almost pitch black and was wet and cold. After entering the main hall, the castle door closed with an ear-piercing creaking sound. That sound was horrifying and gave Harry and Michaela goosebumps. Shortly after the door closed, they could hear shouting, crying, and screaming. Even Harry was frightened by the sounds. According to the instructions given at the beginning, they needed to enter the castle's basement first and find the key to the second floor. The door to the basement was easy to find, but when they saw the endless dark stairs leading down, their bravery vanished. Harry could not help swallowing his saliva. Where should we go first? Harry had no intention of being his normal, fearless self. He was scared that something would jump out and scare him. They were here to play. Everything was fake. There was no need to take it so seriously. If they had fun, it would be fine. However, Harry looked toward June and was beginning to see fear in her eyes. Michaela took a step forward and didn't seem to be scared at all. This surprised Harry more than anything else. Michaela had a happy look in her eyes, as if she could not wait to go down and take a risk in the dark. Harry thought, maybe Michaela was right. June was afraid of something. Harry knew June understood that none of it was real, but she still seemed to be afraid. The corner of Harry's mouth curled into a smile as he grabbed June's hand. He said solemnly, "June, you have to protect me." June said with difficulty, "I'll do everything I can." "Yes, I've always had confidence in you." After Harry finished speaking, he pulled June and walked down the dark stairs. June seemed to hesitate, but she went unwillingly down the stairs. In the basement of the castle, the main room seemed to be an interrogation room or a torture room. There were a few rooms that had various kinds of hideous instruments of torture, and there were some scattered limbs and human remains hanging from the ceiling. Of course, they were just props. However, it looked very realistic. Michaela was the first to turn her face in disgust. She wasn't afraid, just disgusted at the gore. June didn't seem to mind. She was used to seeing this from all her training, but when she walked to the next main room, it was different. This was an underground burial chamber. There were all kinds of pipes and materials inside. Harry grabbed June's hand even tighter. June had been keeping track of all the clues and knew that the key to the second floor would be in one of the pipes. Harry had to search each pipe one by one. This was a little troublesome and time-consuming. Michaela was very excited. She was not afraid at all. She volunteered to check every pipe herself. Harry quietly stayed by the side. He didn't want to risk having his hand grabbed in one of the pipes. He also just wanted his sister to have all the fun. However, as he held June's hand and waited, a small section of the wall beside him suddenly opened by itself. A person in red jumped out from the hole. His face was pale and he was making terrifying sounds. He was about to lunge at Harry. Harry was startled. He didn't know what to do, and just stood there without moving. June screamed and kicked the man the moment she saw him. June only reacted on instinct. She hadn't considered that it was only an actor. She was trying to protect Harry as she had been trained. The dozen or so tubes around her were all shattered by her single kick. The actors who were waiting to jump out and scare them were terrified to do their job. They were planning to rise from some coffins and slowly chase the guests. None of them wanted to scare June and risked getting kicked. June had smashed the wooden pipes with one kick. The actors knew how strong the pipes were. Some of the other actors had been hiding in a few of the pipes. They were also hurt by the kick. "Stop! Stop! June, what are you doing? These are all actors. Don't hurt them." Harry saw that June had gone too far and immediately stopped her. June closed her eyes and screamed. She didn't hear Harry calling her. June kept running around kicking and punching anything that moved. Those actors were all scared silly, and they began to run out of the room screaming. June only opened her eyes when she heard their screams. She looked at Harry with a bit of confusion in her eyes. Harry smiled bitterly and said, "You finally came back to your senses." "Ah, no, I didn't mean it. It was just..." Only then did June realize that she had gotten into trouble. She wanted to explain, but she couldn't say it out loud. Seeing Harry's smiling eyes, June's face instantly turned red. "I'm sorry. I was so scared just now." She had overreacted. June was hiding her fear well, but she hit her limit and lashed out. Her immediate reaction was to fight when most people would just scream, "Ha ha ha, June, no way, you're really afraid of ghosts, that's hilarious." Michaela laughed until she could not catch her breath. Harry couldn't help but laugh. He didn't expect June to be afraid of the supernatural. "Michaela, don't laugh at June. Didn't you see that her face is red? We should leave, let's go," Harry said. "You still want to leave? No one is allowed to leave until I get an explanation." The basement of the castle was now in pieces. The staff who were supposed to be scaring the tourists had run away. This situation made people not know whether to laugh or cry. The ones who should be scaring people had been scared away. It was a bit awkward. June was like a child who had done something wrong. She stood in front of Harry and lowered her head to pinch the corner of her clothes. Michaela, on the other hand, looked like she was trying her best to hold back her laughter. However, under Harry's instructions, she did not laugh out loud, which made June even more embarrassed. Just as Harry and the others were about to leave, the staff members who were scared away earlier came in with a large group of people. "Boss, they did it. They destroyed our props," said a ghoul. "Yes, look at what happened," said a ghost. "My nose is broken," said one of the actors. The actors had gone to their boss to complain. June had been scared, but she held back. She knew none of them were hurt. They ran into each other in panic as they tried to run out of the room. That was when June suspected that they hurt each other. The owner of the Castle of Terror saw that the room and props were in shambles. He had spent a lot on materials to get everything to look realistic. He was in shock that all the props had been destroyed. The guy who owned the Castle of Terror was in a cooperative relationship with the amusement park. He earned a commission on all sales into the park, since his attractions brought in a lot of paying customers. However, if his property were destroyed, he'd have to pay out of pocket. The boss was furious. He spent a lot of money on those pipes, and the materials to make new ones had gone up in price. "None of you are leaving. Someone has to pay for all of this," the boss shouted. "Not only for the damaged props, but also for my employees' hospital bills," he continued. Harry was stunned. The employees didn't want to let them go. They stood in the doorway, blocking their exit. There were tourists outside who heard the commotion and stood by the door to watch curiously. Harry had to swallow his pride and would pay for the damages. It was the least he could do after June had panicked and destroyed the well-crafted props. "How much do you want?" Harry asked. The boss frowned and carefully checked how much everything would cost. He calculated the price in his heart but did not reply to Harry immediately. His employees were less willing to pick a reasonable number. 50,000. If you don't take out 50,000 today, then don't even think about leaving," said the ghoul. "I'm bleeding. I need $100,000, said one of the actors. Harry instantly sneered. Michaela was shocked by their request. They asked for a few $100,000 for damages. Michaela began to panic. In the past, she felt that she would never be able to earn this kind of money in her lifetime, so she looked at Harry with a worried look. She knew these people were trying to extort Harry. "There's no way all of this would cost that much. Don't try to swindle me," Harry warned them sternly. The actors started shouting. Harry faintly smelled the smell of alcohol and thought that they had been drinking on the job. Harry became even more unhappy, and his brows furrowed even more tightly. They had been using their downtime to get drunk waiting for tourists. Because they needed to hide in a very small and sealed space for a long time, some people would secretly take out their phones to kill time. Drinking wasn't allowed in the amusement park and in the Castle of Terror. Most of the actors had fallen asleep while they were hiding in their pipes. It was only when Harry came in that he triggered the small alarms. After that, these few people began to perform their jobs. They all panicked when June began kicking all the hiding places. Even the most drunk of the employees woke up and ran to find their boss. They regained their courage when they thought they could get a huge pay out of this incident. There were so many security guards in the amusement park. It was just 3 tourists. There was nothing to be afraid of. When they came with their boss, they found Harry and the others standing in the chaos. They were the cause of the destruction, and they'd have to pay for the damages. The actors were happy thinking they could squeeze some money out of Harry and his friends. It was a pity that Harry ignored them. He turned to the boss and asked, "Are you done?" After typing for a long time on his phone, he finally calculated how much he had lost. He then said to Harry, "I've got the full cost of damages." "How much?" "I'll pay whatever it would cost to replace everything," Harry said indifferently. He could buy the castle a few times over with no trouble. He was happy to pay for any damages. Even buying the whole amusement park would be a piece of cake for him. The boss knocked on the screen and said, "This is a list of everything that needs to be replaced, and here is the list for all the repair costs. The total comes out to $2 million. "Are you trying to scam us?" Michaela started to argue. If she had to pay $2 million, it would make her explode. To Michaela, $2 million was an astronomical sum of money. She had never been rich, but she could tell that everything in the basement wouldn't cost nearly $2 million. The boss shook his head and said, "Little girl, you don't know what you're talking about. I spent a lot of money on some good products for realism. If you don't know what you're talking about, you shouldn't join the conversation." Michaela still wanted to say something, but Harry reached out and stopped her. He turned to the boss and said, "I agree to the amount. You clearly spent a lot of time setting all of this up. I'm sorry for the damages. I'm happy to pay for my mistake." The boss smiled. "Good man. However, that's not everything. That will just cover the cost of the props. You also need to pay me the money I'd lose for closing the building down while we're replacing everything." Harry nodded. "That's what I suspected. How much?" It's not our busiest time yet. I don't have a lot of customers around this time, but I must make more than $10,000 a day. I'll have to be closed for 10 days, so $100,000. The boss calculated and spoke. Harry was very happy. "All right, that's the price. I appreciate how easily you are taking this. Don't take any of it to heart, I just have to protect my business." The boss started to become a businessman again. He seemed to be very amiable. "It's no problem at all. I understand completely," Harry said politely. Seeing that the two of them were about to finish chatting and laughing, the employees were unhappy. Harry frowned and asked the boss, "Sir, I think your employees are still angry with me," the ghoul said. Of course we're still mad. We come here to work and scare people. We were just doing our job when she destroyed the room and kicked us all. Harry sneered and said, "Was it our fault that you got hurt? Or was it because you've been drinking on the job?" With this question, everyone suddenly became silent. The few employees that had been drinking shot glances at each other. The boss was shocked. He sniffed the air and indeed smelled some alcohol from these people. He immediately became unhappy. The boss spoke up. "Who's been drinking on the clock?" The ghoul said. "None of us have been drinking. You know us. We've worked here for years." The boss was a little embarrassed and said, "I trust my employees. If they say they're sober, I'm going to believe them." Seeing that he was starting to lean toward his own people, Harry sneered. He said coldly, "I can respect that, but I still have to file a complaint. If your employees are drinking on the job, then I'm surprised no one got hurt till now." The boss started to sweat. Harry pressed on. "Don't get mad at me if I don't honor our deal. If anything, them being drunk on the job could have caused all the damages. We could have been seriously harmed. I think you should be paying me." The boss was instantly frightened. Seeing Harry's serious expression, he was really scared. If Harry was telling the truth, then it would be a big deal for him, and he might have to sell his business. If there was a problem with the Castle of Terror and the tourists complained about it, the amusement park would definitely put pressure on him. At that time, he would have to consider moving the attraction or going bankrupt. "How dare you drink at work? You take my good nature for granted. You even want to extort tourists. How can you be so heartless?" After considering the consequences, the boss decisively shot up at his employees. Harry crossed his arms and watched the show. The employees were surprised. They didn't expect their boss to suddenly change his attitude. "We were all injured. Why should we pay?" the ghoul said. "I think we need some work injury compensation," said an actor. "I don't think so. You guys are fired. Put the costumes back and get out." The boss made a prompt decision and decided to fire his drunk employees immediately. Harry pitied these people a little. They were in the wrong and could have made better choices. After being scolded, each and every one of them rolled out with their faces covered in dirt. After chasing them away, the boss looked at Harry with a smile. "Sorry about that. Shall we get back to what we had been discussing?" "No problem," Harry said happily. He wouldn't avoid responsibility. He'd pay for damages to the owner's property. He just didn't want to pay for the drunk employees that were just trying to steal his money. Very soon, he transferred the payment to the boss. After dealing with this matter, Harry and the others were no longer in the mood to stay and play through the rest of the castle. The owner had asked them to stay and continue the game, but Harry refused and left with Michaela and June. June walked outside with a sorry look on her face. Harry smiled. "It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it." "2 million is a lot of money. You should have argued for a lower amount," Michaela also said regretfully. She thought Harry had been scammed. She was just happy that he didn't submit to the employees that were demanding money for their injuries. Harry shook his head. "It's all right. $2 million is nothing. We were partly at fault anyway, and I'm not going to spend my whole day arguing. I came out to have a lovely day with my sister, not to bicker with some old man over costs." June, on the other hand, "I really didn't expect that some fake and terrifying environment could scare you to such an extent. Ha ha ha." Harry thought of what had just happened and started to laugh again. June was convinced that she'd be fine going through the haunted house. She was more surprised than anyone that she was scared out of her mind, and even though she clearly knew that it was all fake, she still couldn't help being afraid. For ordinary girls, when they enter the horror room, they might scream. June reacted the only way a highly trained bodyguard would react. June said shyly, "I actually have never been good with scary things. I never watched any horror movies because I thought they were too scary." "Then what did you do when you were training?" Harry asked curiously. When the Parker family trained their guards, the first thing they needed to do was to be loyal, powerful, and fearless. All three of these factors were indispensable. Loyalty was the most important trait they wanted in their people. Strength was secondary, but still important. If any of the guards were cowards, they'd never make it in the Parker family. Harry didn't know much about how his family trained their guards. He just assumed they'd done the worst things imaginable and came out as perfect soldiers. He'd heard that his family trained the guard using fighting live rounds with nothing but their hands. They'd also send them into cemeteries at night to work on their innate fear of the dark and unknown. Harry asked about the kind of training she went through and how well June did on them. She said in a low voice, Actually, I got full marks in the live bullet training, but I failed the other test. It took a lot to get my score back up again. I see. Harry was deep in thought. The guards trained by the Parker family were the elites among the elites. They varied in skill and were ranked accordingly. June was ranked low among the best, so she was capable and could handle most jobs the family wanted her to do. Harry is one of many heirs in his generation, so he is required to have a guard. His parents had passed away, which lowered his importance, so he was assigned to June. Had his parents lived, he'd be given a higher ranking guard. However, Harry was glad that June still had some humanity. Otherwise, the two of them would never have gotten along in the first place. June was exceptional at everything she needed to do to keep Harry safe. He didn't mind if she was scared of ghosts. Harry was smiling. "Are you disappointed in me?" June said in fear when she saw that Harry was silent. Harry was stunned. "How could that be? I'm happy." He thought it was ridiculous to look at June as just another number, and not as the exceptional woman that had saved his life several times. "Don't worry about it. I'm really glad that you're here as my bodyguard and friend." Harry comforted her again. "Then I'll continue to do my best," June said firmly. "Stop pestering her, Harry. She's embarrassed enough just thinking about it. Let's find somewhere else to go. I don't want to end the day on a sour note," Michaela said excitedly. Michaela had been worried for Harry, but seeing that he was happy after spending so much money, she stopped worrying about it. She came out to have fun with her brother. She didn't want her day to be ruined. "We should go take a hot air balloon ride. I bet you've never done that, have you?" Harry suggested. "I've never flown in anything before. I think a hot air balloon would be fun." Michaela became excited. "You haven't been on a plane? I own a private plane, so if you ever want to take it, all you have to do is ask," Harry said happily. "You have a private plane? That's amazing," Michaela exclaimed. "It's not that incredible. Once you finish your exams, I'd be happy to take you on a trip to anywhere you want to go," Harry said. "Anywhere? I never thought about traveling. I used to think I'd be stuck in this city forever," Michaela said. "Now you can start thinking about where you want to go. We can fly to Japan for breakfast and be in France for dinner." Harry said it very naturally. Most people couldn't fly more than once a year and never left the country. Michaela was trying to think of all the places she wanted to go to and see. Michaela couldn't imagine flying for most of the day only to stay in the country for an hour or two. She was in awe at her brother's ability to not be tired. Harry knew that Michaela would want to travel, but only after she gets into a good university. He wanted Michaela to be happy, and getting into a good university was her life goal. He couldn't take that away from her. Harry, Michaela, and June stayed at the amusement park until sunset. They stayed to watch the fireworks at the end of the day. Then they went to their temporary home. Michaela's old home was a prison in comparison. Even if the new one was temporary, she already thought of it as home. Michaela felt safe and was happy to be with Harry, hoping she wasn't being a burden on her brother. Harry was doing his best to adapt to living with Michaela. He wanted her to be happy to make up for her horrible childhood. The next day, Michaela took Harry's car to school. Harry laid on the sofa in the living room of the villa and was deep in thought. He found that he had nothing else to do. Michaela was going to school for a whole day. He didn't have any business in the city, so he chose to rest. All his businesses were operating on their own and didn't need his input for the day. This made him feel bored. It made him feel uncomfortable. He didn't know what to do. "Harry, are you feeling sick?" June asked with concern. Harry sighed. "No, I am just feeling anxious because I have nothing better to do than to sit around." "Would you like to go on a walk?" June offered. "Not a whole lot nearby to walk to. You know I'd rather stay inside." "Then would you like to play a game?" "Boring. Not interested." "Then how about I give you a massage?" June said with a straight face. Harry shook his head. "No thanks. That'll just make me want to do less." June felt a little lost in her heart. She wanted to get closer to Harry. She didn't want others around when she was talking to Harry. He was usually surrounded by people, which made it harder for her to get closer to him. She was also worried about her duties and didn't want to compromise Harry's safety. Now that Michaela was off at school, they were the only two in the house. June thought it was the best chance at getting closer to Harry. Harry was bored and stared at the television. He unconsciously pressed the remote control to change the channel. Suddenly, he switched to a food channel. Seeing the delicious dishes being cooked inside, Harry sat up. "What's wrong?" June asked. "I thought of a problem," Harry replied. "What's the problem?" Michaela didn't come back at noon. She must be eating at the school lunch or getting some snacks. How can I be so lazy? Harry suddenly blamed himself. What do you mean? June asked. I should be making lunch for her. I can call some of the five-star chefs and have them prepare her some meals. No, I have to do it myself, Harry protested. Harry finally found something to do. Having a goal gave him motivation. Harry became excited. Harry hadn't cooked in a while and was a little nervous. He'd gotten used to having his own personal chef, but remembered how he'd always make instant noodles or cheap food that would taste all right. Harry had done his best to learn to cook with limited ingredients, and he had gotten pretty good. He didn't know how to make a gourmet meal, but he knew how to cook a wide variety of home meals. I bought a lot of things yesterday from the store. I'll make something with that, Harry said happily. Harry wanted Michaela to have a home-cooked meal. Harry picked a recipe and started to cook. He took out vegetables, eggs, and fresh meat from the fridge and started to work. Harry asked June to help him with preparations. He wanted to do the majority of the cooking himself. Very quickly, a serving of steaming hot rice, a serving of fried eggs, and a serving of braised pork ribs were finished. Adding on a serving of porridge, 2 side dishes, and a bowl of soup were enough for a complete meal. It was almost noon. Harry put the fruits of his hard work into the lunchbox, sat in the car, and rushed towards Michaela's school. At the Mountain City High School, Michaela's arrival in the morning had caused a small stir. Everyone knew she always rode an old bike to school, but today everyone was stunned seeing her in a nice car. When the car slowly stopped at the school entrance, the students started taking pictures of it. The students had never seen a luxury car up close before. They didn't know who was driving it. The best they could guess was Chad. They knew his family was rich and had seen him in some fairly expensive cars. When Michaela got out of the car with a red face from all the attention, no one could believe their eyes. More sharp-eyed people noticed that although Michaela was still wearing an ordinary school uniform, she was carrying a school bag on her back. However, the shoes she was wearing were different. In the past, her school bag was an old school bag that she had been carrying for many years. Her shoes were also the cheapest money could buy. But today, Michaela was carrying a luxury brand backpack, and she was also wearing Audrey's new sports shoes on her feet. They all recognized the expensive brand. Michaela didn't want to go to school with such expensive stuff. She was happy to ride in on her bike and use her old things. Harry didn't agree. He thought it'd be better for her to wear her nice shoes and to take his car so she could get to school on time. Harry wanted her to look like his sister. He'd be sad to see her wearing dingy clothes. After getting out of the car, she faced the curious gazes of her classmates. "Michaela, what happened?" someone shouted. Michaela had just gotten out of Harry's car when her classmate and good friend Hannah saw her. Hannah saw Michaela step out of a luxury car she had never seen before and was stunned. "Michaela, whose car is this? Are the rumors true?" Hannah was surprised. She heard the news from Michaela's old neighbors. She only found out that Michaela had a long-lost brother that was incredibly rich. Moreover, the other party was a super wealthy family, very rich and powerful. Word had spread through the neighborhoods, and a large portion of the town had heard about the drama at Michaela's old house. Hannah couldn't believe it, but today, she was seeing it with her own eyes. Sure enough, Michaela came to school in a luxury car. Hannah and Michaela grew up together. Michaela was very happy when she saw her best friend. Too many things had happened in the past few days. She wanted to tell Hannah everything. "Wow, is this your brother's car?" Hannah exclaimed. Michaela was very embarrassed to be surrounded by her classmates. She said softly, "Not here, I'll tell you in private. I'm going to class, you guys can head home." Michaela turned around and said to the guards by the car, "I'm sorry, but we were told to stay near the school. You can call us if you ever need help." The guard said respectfully, "I won't need you, so don't wait for me." Michaela waved her hand and pulled Hannah into the school. Harry's guards were still standing outside the school. Although they were respectful to Michaela, they still had to listen to Harry's orders. Michaela left, but the surrounding students still looked very curious and looked at the guards. They were discussing about the guards and their connection to Michaela. They assumed some rich man was going to marry her and she was about to become the wife of a very successful man. A few others were talking about how they thought guards were there to watch Michaela to see if she would try and run away. They were starting rumors off the little amount of information they had from just the guards and the luxury car. When they remembered that they still had to go to school and the school bell was about to ring, the surrounding students immediately scattered to their respective classes. Inside, Michaela was bombarded with questions by her classmates. Many of the students who weren't at the school entrance also heard what others said. When they saw Michaela wearing an expensive brand backpack, they were instantly dumbfounded. They couldn't believe that Michaela was rich now. They all knew her as a poor, beautiful girl. Their first class was self-study time. Each and every one of them was lost in thought. From time to time, they shifted their gazes away from the books and looked at Michaela. All the girls in her class were jealous of her backpack and shoes. The one thing they had on her was they could afford nice clothes. Michaela was naturally beautiful, which all the girls hated her for. Now she was beautiful and had the clothes to match. They were envious. The boys in her class weren't any better. They were all staring at Michaela, hoping she'd come over and talk to them. Seeing the boys in the class looking at Michaela without even blinking made the girls angry. Hannah was sitting beside Michaela and was more anxious than everyone else in her class. She was a very curious girl. Michaela was like a completely different person. As her best friend, she had to know everything that had happened in the past few days. Michaela couldn't explain everything while she was trying to study. Now that there was a teacher patrolling in class, she didn't want to say anything. It wasn't long before Hannah overcame her anxiety and started talking. Michaela, tell me what's going on, Hannah said anxiously. I said I'd tell you the first chance I got when I'm not trying to study, Michaela whispered. You have to tell me now, Hannah begged. All right, sit down and I'll tell you, Michaela said helplessly. She briefly told her what had happened in the past 2 days, about Harry and the Parker family. When Hannah heard that Harry was Michaela's older brother, she was so shocked that her mouth was wide open the whole time Michaela was talking. What? Harry is your older brother? How is that possible? Didn't he come here to work? How did he become your brother? Hannah couldn't believe it. When I first found out, I was as surprised as you, but it's the truth. Michaela shrugged. But he doesn't look like it. He looked like a poor construction worker. Hannah was still skeptical. Don't judge a book by its cover, Michaela said helplessly. Hannah curled her lips. All right, I believe you. I just worry you're being lied to. In Hannah's eyes, Harry was just some bum trying to con Michaela. When Harry first met them, he had disguised himself too successfully. Whether it was his attire or his temperament, it was hard to tell. He was nothing more than a poor construction worker to Hannah. Anyone who saw Harry's previous appearance would never believe that he was some rich billionaire. All they could see was some poor man who couldn't afford to buy new clothes working himself to the bone. Hannah felt that Harry was too old-fashioned. He didn't dress up like he had money. I don't have anything he could want, besides we took a test and we're related, Michaela said. You took a DNA test before, didn't you? Hannah remembered that she had accompanied Michaela to the hospital in the past. Yes. Actually, I've always wanted to know who my biological father is since I was young. I did find him, but he died a while ago, Michaela said sadly. Ah, I'm sorry, Hannah said apologetically. Don't worry. I'm not sad. After all, I'd never met him before. Hard to miss someone you've never met. You still have an older brother and he pampers you so much, Hannah said. Thinking about how Harry suddenly appeared in front of Michaela and protected her in all sorts of ways, even secretly following her by side, Hannah understood. Harry really cared about his sister, and he didn't care who knew it. The two of them sat together and chatted. After a while, they were surrounded by a group of classmates. The group of students chattered and gossiped. They were very curious about Michaela's mysterious family background. Michaela lightly frowned. She didn't want to attract attention like this and felt very uncomfortable. It wasn't easy for her to answer her classmates' questions. She didn't want to sound like she was bragging. However, if she didn't answer, she'd appear even more indifferent, as if she had struck the jackpot and looked down on others. Fortunately, the school bell rang. When her classmates were crowding her and preventing her from leaving, a teacher came by. What are you all doing? Go back to your seats. The college entrance exam is about to start. Under the scolding of the teacher, the students finally let Michaela go. Just like that in the morning, Michaela, under the attention of her classmates, was unable to sit still as she endured their stares. The sound of the afternoon break bell rang, and the students in the classroom scrambled to run out. This was the lunch bell. Everyone was hungry and no longer paid attention to Michaela. Now they were more concerned with what they were going to eat. Those whose homes were close to the school chose to go home for lunch. Those who were far away from home would eat in the school cafeteria. Hannah, as usual, prepared to go to the cafeteria with Michaela. But just as Michaela walked out of the classroom, her phone rang. Usually, Michaela wouldn't have her phone on, but she had it between her studies. The teachers only cared if the students used their phones in class. Harry bought Michaela a new phone when they were shopping yesterday. It was the latest smartphone and looked very stylish. Harry's factory on the island was working on their own smartphone and was planning on releasing them soon. He'd give Michaela one of those phones when they were ready. Michaela had been careful not to drop her new phone. She was worried she'd break it on the first day. Hence, when Michaela took out her phone to answer the call, Hannah stared blankly. She couldn't believe that Michaela had a nice phone. Of course, Michaela was not showing off, but if anyone saw her, they would think she was flaunting her wealth. Michaela was afraid that something would happen, so she quickly answered. Hello, what's the matter? You just finished class, right? Come to the school entrance. I'm at the door. Why are you here? I have something for you. Come quickly, Harry said mysteriously. He hung up the phone before she could ask anything else. Michaela muttered a few times. She didn't understand what was going on, but she still walked towards the school entrance. Hey, Michaela, where are you going? Hannah asked. I'm going to the school entrance. My brother is here. Can I come with you? Sure, Michaela agreed. The two of them stopped going to the cafeteria and went to the school gate. Hannah wanted to see Harry with her own eyes again. She wanted to know if he was actually rich. When they reached the door, Michaela saw Harry standing by his car from afar. He was carrying a bag in his hand. What did you bring me? I don't remember leaving anything at the house, Michaela said in puzzlement. Harry smiled and handed her the bag. I made lunch for you. Michaela then saw that in the bag was a lunchbox. Looking at Harry's smiling face, she felt inexplicably touched. She felt that she was going to cry. This was the first time anyone in her family ever cared to make lunch for her. Looking at the heart-filled lunchbox that Harry sent over, Michaela was so touched that tears started to flow down her face. You came to give me lunch? Michaela asked. Harry smiled and said, Of course. I know you study hard, so I wanted to make something nice for you. I'm not studying that hard. Michaela was embarrassed and said, Don't be modest, you're working hard. You need good food so you can have the energy you need to study and for the test, Harry said seriously. Harry smiled and shook his head. All right, let's go eat. We have to hurry before the food gets cold. Where are you going? Michaela asked. Harry said, I'm going home, you're welcome to come with me. Michaela pushed him away and said, No, I'll eat lunch here. All right, I'll just be bored alone at home, Harry said with a smile. She knew Harry was trying to guilt trip her, but she smiled and left. Harry returned to his villa. Rubbing his hands, he began to consider preparing a meal for the afternoon. As for what to cook, Michaela didn't say what she liked to eat, so Harry could only pick up what he was good at. In the school, Michaela said goodbye to Harry and followed Hannah to the bleachers next to the field behind the school. Harry had made a lot of food. Michaela couldn't finish all the food by herself. She could only ask Hannah to finish it with her. After opening the lunchbox, Hannah looked at the dishes inside and was a little disappointed. What is it? It's just an ordinary meal, Michaela said. My brother made it for me. I think that's something special. Hannah curled her lips. I thought it'd be nicer. I thought your brother was rich. Michaela pretended to be angry and said, Stop complaining. Do you want to eat it or not? If you don't want to eat it, then give it back to me. Hey, I'll still eat it. Hannah saw that Michaela was about to put away the food and immediately gave in. But when she started to eat, Hannah immediately smiled and narrowed her eyes. This is really good. Your brother made this? He's such a good cook, Hannah praised. I remember him telling me that he used to cook a lot. I thought he'd be good, but he made something so delicious, Michaela said casually. Hey, I was expecting him to just pay someone else to do it or to fly to France to get you something from a famous restaurant. You've seen too many movies. No, that's true, Hannah said vaguely while eating. Eat slowly. No one is going to steal the food from you. Hey, I just remembered. Where do you live with your brother now? Hannah asked. Not too far. It's over at East Park, Michaela casually said. Hannah's eyes widened again. Over at East Park? You guys are living in the Villa District? There was no one in the old city who didn't know about the East Park. Hence, when Hannah heard that Michaela was living there, she was so shocked that she choked on her food. It's just a house, Michaela said helplessly. Michaela, it's East Park. That's the rich side of town. You need some serious money to live there. Why are you living there of all places? I need to finish my exams and he was happy to stay with me, so he needed to find a place for us to stay. He hates renting, so he just bought one of the villas, Michaela said. That's crazy, Hannah exclaimed. Hannah was envious of Michaela's luck. Can I come to see your house soon? Hannah asked. Michaela nodded and said, Of course, you can come over whenever you want. Then can we go tonight? Can I stay the night? Hannah said impatiently. As long as your parents agree. Okay, it's a deal then. Hannah jumped up in joy. Hannah was curious about what one of the villas looked like on the inside. Moreover, Hannah and Michaela had been friends since they were young. It was very common for them to stay the night at each other's houses. Most of the time, it was Michaela who used to stay at Hannah's house. Michaela's family hated having Hannah come to their home. Now, it was different. Michaela had a new home, and her brother Harry was a very kind person. He'd be happy to have one of Michaela's friends over. Looking at the empty lunchbox, Hannah touched her stomach and felt very embarrassed. Michaela, is your brother okay if I come home with you? Hannah asked worriedly. I'm sure he'll be fine with it. 4 people in such a big house will have plenty of room. Michaela thought about it and said. When she heard that there were 4 people, Hannah was stunned for a moment and asked, Who's the 4th? June. She's my brother's bodyguard, but the 2 of them are very close, Michaela said. Hannah was heartbroken. She had a small crush on Harry since he had beaten up Hess and Chad. She thought he was handsome, despite the ugly clothes he wore. Now that she knew he was rich, she figured he'd never fall for a girl like her. She thought, he could have any girl in the world, he won't choose me. She was feeling a little uncomfortable knowing June and Harry were close. She knew she'd be a little jealous seeing them together in the same house. She hadn't been thinking about it a lot. She had just hoped that Harry was single and lied about having a girlfriend. Now she thought that he was seeing June. She felt awkward going over to his house. Michaela hadn't noticed Hannah's crush on Harry. She could tell her friend was a little flustered. Seeing that Hannah's expression was a little different, Michaela said, What's wrong? Do you feel embarrassed to visit? It's fine. June's nice, she won't bother you. There is no need to feel embarrassed. Hannah forced a smile. All right, if you say so. She regretted mentioning that she wanted to stay at Michaela's house for a night, and now she felt like not going. Michaela put her arm around Hannah's shoulder and said, All right, don't be so wishy-washy. You're my best friend. Did you think that because I'm rich now that I'd abandon you? Hannah was still in a dilemma. She said, That's different. Your brother and his girlfriend live together. I don't want to bother them. The house is huge. You don't have to worry about that at all. All right then, but you should ask your brother first. All right, Michaela shook her head. Hannah suddenly asked mysteriously, Speaking of which, your brother is so rich. Did he give you any pocket money? Hannah got an allowance. She wondered if Michaela had gotten some money from her brother. Seeing that Michaela didn't say anything, Hannah said, 1,000 or 2,000? Don't tell me it's over 10,000? Michaela shook her head. No. Ah, not even 1,000? Your brother is so stingy? Hannah said in surprise. No, I mean I don't have any pocket money. How is that possible? Hannah said. Michaela smiled. Harry doesn't give me an allowance because he gave me my inheritance from our dad. Hannah was stunned. Can you tell me how much it is? Michaela thought for a while and softly said, I think it was 10 billion. I didn't take a closer look. How much? Hannah was so scared that her face changed shape. She thought she heard it wrong. She swallowed hard and asked again, How much? 10 billion? Yes, I think so. He said it was all mine. I can spend it however I want. He won't keep track of it, Michaela said. Hannah was in awe, thinking about how she had at most a few $100s to her name. If she wanted to eat good snacks, she'd have to budget. Michaela, can I ask you something? Hannah said with a fawning look. Sure. The school's little merchandise shop just ordered a batch of new flavors of potato chips. Can you buy me some? I wanted to give them a try, Hannah said with a look of expectation. Hannah didn't have much pocket money, so she didn't dare to buy such expensive bags of chips. Michaela thought Hannah would ask for more from her now that she knew she had more money than she could ever spend. Didn't you just finish eating? How are you still hungry? It's different. I'm always hungry for snacks, Hannah said anxiously. All right then, let's go get some, Michaela said happily. That's great. I knew you were a good friend. Hannah gave her a thumbs up. Michaela was happy to pay for Hannah's snacks. She had often asked Hannah to pay for her snacks when she was poor. Now that Michaela had money, she felt that it was only right to treat her best friend back. She couldn't let others feel that she had become petty when she was rich. Let's go buy all the snacks, Michaela waved her small hand and said very arrogantly. Hannah was dancing with joy. Finally, the 2 of them bought a bunch of snacks from the store and carried them back to the field. In the end, the two of them were full. In the afternoon, when Harry came to deliver food to Michaela again, Michaela had not even digested the food that she ate at noon. Now she had no appetite at all. After asking Harry about Hannah wanting to stay in the villa for the night, Harry agreed without hesitation. He promised that he would bring the two of them back together after the evening self-study session. Hannah was happy. She could brag to her classmates that she had been in one of the very expensive villas. But when she really waited until the evening self-study ended and took Harry's luxury car to the villa, she couldn't believe how extravagant the villas were on the inside. Harry's newly bought mansion was the premier villa of East Park. This was the villa that the real estate office used to market for the rest of the neighborhood. This was the first time Hannah had been in such a big house. She was amazed that only 3 people lived here. The house was a 2-story villa with a finished basement with an attached courtyard. Hannah had never seen such a beautiful arrangement of flowers in one garden. Inside the villa, Michaela showed Hannah their wall projector that was about as big as a movie theater screen. The whole house was decorated with a lot of ornate furniture. The floor shined like it was made of glass. Hannah felt like she couldn't walk on it or Harry might get angry. "Don't be nervous. Get comfortable. You can treat our home as your home." Harry saw that Hannah was a little nervous, so he comforted her. "Ah, okay," Hannah said guiltily. Hannah didn't want to be rude in such a nice house. She didn't expect Harry to treat her so warmly. Hannah had only seen places like this in actual palaces that she learned about in school. She didn't know one of her friends would ever live in something that looks like a real palace. "All right, don't stand at the door. Come and see my room," Michaela called out. Michaela pulled Hannah by the hand up the stairs to her room. Hannah had imagined Michaela's old room and how sparse the walls were and how dingy her bed was. Seeing her new room, she was overjoyed that she was living somewhere nice now. She was even more happy that her good friend could get away from her old family. "Michaela, you said that after the exams you're going to go to a university and we won't get to see each other anymore." Michaela was stunned for a moment. She didn't think that Hannah would bring up this problem. Michaela hated to think about leaving her friend. Since she was young, everyone, including her family, hated her. The only person that showed any kind of compassion was Hannah. Hannah was her best friend, and she never thought about her when she was thinking about doing well on the exams to get into a good university far away. Michaela was reluctant to leave her best friend. Michaela became sad. "That's true. I never thought about it. It's not like I want to leave you, but Harry can't stay here forever," Hannah consoled. "Why are you sad? You should be happy. I'm not angry with you, I just wanted to know. You're my best friend. I know you've been working toward this your whole life. I can't get in the way of your dreams." "Yeah, but if I leave, won't you be lonely too?" Michaela said. Hannah wouldn't lie and told her that she'd not be lonely, but that shouldn't stop her from going to university. "We can just video chat whenever we want. It'll be like you never left," Hannah said. Michaela nodded. "That's true. I knew this day would come, but I guess I just assumed you'd come with me." When she said this, Hannah immediately lost her temper. "That's crazy. You're the smartest girl I know and you score higher than everyone else. There's no chance I can get into the same university as you. I'll probably just end up going to some kind of community college." When she mentioned this topic, Michaela suddenly thought of something. Turning on the computer, she waved at Hannah and said, "Let's check and see which schools there are, in a city that's kinda close." Hannah didn't understand. "Why?" "Oh my, you are so stupid. I'll take the exam and you'll go to a community college and I'll just pick a university that's close by," Michaela said. Hannah immediately slapped her thigh. "That's right. Why didn't I think of this?" After saying that, she asked doubtfully, "But Michaela, you never said what degree you want to get." Michaela smiled and said, "I only wanted to get good grades. The plan was to go to whichever college gives me the best scholarship. I never thought about what major I wanted to get." "What about now?" Hannah asked. "Now, it doesn't matter. I've got more money than I know what to do with, so I don't need a scholarship. I can go to any university I want." "Which one of these schools do you like most?" "You know that I've always wanted to go to the ocean, right?" "Yeah, what does that have to do with anything?" Hannah was puzzled. "I was thinking we could go to a school near the ocean and I could study to be a marine biologist or something," Michaela said firmly. Hannah thought about it and said, "Sounds good to me. Find a school you like and I'll try and find a community college nearby." "Okay, then it's settled," Michaela said happily. At this time, there was a knock on the bedroom door. "Michaela, I made some snacks for you guys. Open the door," Harry said from outside. Okay, I'll be right there, Michaela said. Michaela put on her slippers and quickly ran over. Harry, thank you. Hannah saw the various desserts that Harry brought and smiled. I heard you two chattering outside the door. What are you talking about? Harry asked. Michaela said casually, Oh, I was talking about which school I want to apply to. Harry immediately became concerned. Oh, which one have you been looking at? I have an idea of what I want, but I haven't picked any yet. Michaela shook her head. Harry had discussed this with Michaela before. Harry told her she could go to any school she wanted without taking the exam. He thought it was silly to do it the hard way, but he respected her determination. Now that he heard Michaela had a goal, Harry felt that as her brother, he had to listen to her. No matter which university Michaela wanted to go to, Harry had to find out all he could about the university. Nowadays, there were too many universities that were just money dumps. Even among the top universities, there were actually quite a number of departments that were just a waste of money because the piece of paper was enough for employers. None of the graduates had to know anything in their field. The so-called university professors were just as bad. A lot of them took the position for their own research and do a very little teaching. They lowered their requirements for graduation to be more inclusive. Harry didn't want to go to that kind of school. Harry was going to make it his mission to get her into a university where she could be challenged and graduate with honors. I want to be near the ocean. I also have always dreamed of working with fish, so I hope I can get into a program like that. That's the kind of program you want? Harry asked. Yes. Oh, then let me think about it. What are the specialties related to the ocean? There seem to be a lot of them. Harry held his chin and thought. Navigation, ocean climate, ocean environment and ecology, ocean geology, fishery. Harry listed a lot of career choices, Michaela said. There are really a lot of them. Which should I choose? Harry also gave up thinking in the end. Don't worry about it now. You've got plenty of time to think about it. Yes, I'll think about it more, Michaela also said. Once you finish the snacks, don't stay up too late, Harry instructed. Got it. Harry said goodbye to the two of them and walked out of the room to the living room. June saw him thinking and asked, Harry, is there something on your mind? It's nothing. I was thinking about Michaela choosing a university. Are you worried about it? Harry shook his head. Not really. Originally, Harry thought that he would let her take the exam if she wanted to. But now that Michaela had a specific direction, it was difficult for Harry to not worry about her not getting accepted. There were not many schools that specialized in the ocean, and there were even fewer good schools. He also didn't know if this kind of school was suitable for Michaela. Ocean specialization. From the bottom of Harry's heart, he didn't want Michaela to choose this type of career. Harry had always felt that the ocean made him feel sad. Furthermore, it was very dangerous. Harry had nearly drowned in the ocean. After telling June about the worries in his heart, June comforted, Harry, Michaela is an adult. She has her own wants and desires. You can't really stop her now. I know, but I'm just starting to get to know her. I'm worried that something would happen to her, and even if she was slightly unhappy, I'd hate myself for letting her go, Harry said in a conflicted manner. June smiled. Are you worried that you won't be around to protect her? Harry praised. June, you know me the best. That is exactly what I was thinking. June got up. She said, I don't know what you're worried about. Oh, what do you mean? Harry asked. Harry heard a few unfamiliar names from Michaela and checked the internet. He found that most of them were new to the entertainment industry. They were the so-called celebrities who walked the path of idols. They were not big shots in the entertainment industry. However, each and every one of them had a terrifying number of fans. They were very popular among teenagers. These celebrities were all invited? Harry asked. Michaela shook her head. Not all of them. I heard that the girls' group was hired by Chad's family. Harry was surprised. I guess he wants to waste all of his family's money. Are they just going to perform? Michaela said, they'll give a speech for the students, but the main attraction will be their performance. Also, students from other schools are also going to be invited. That's pretty cool. Glad that there are some schools that are happy to allow other schools to attend. Harry became interested. It's nice, but the celebrities are usually going to favor the people that invited them. More often, they will only pay attention to that student who has invited them, Michaela explained. Harry was deep in thought. I see. I understand. You should go and rest. Michaela was speechless. It was too much to send her away after asking this question. Michaela stuck out her tongue behind Harry's back and went back to her room. Harry thought about the event and smiled. June looked at Harry and asked, Any ideas? Yes, I have too many ideas. Michaela's school is going to hold a celebration. As her older brother, I'll do my part, Harry said with a smile. I think you are going to do your best. June shook her head and smiled. That's true. I think it'd be best if I made Michaela the center of attention. It sounds like Chad's going to buy his way to the center of attention. I hate that kid, so it'd be fun to ruin his big day. Harry waved his hand and said. Harry had an entertainment company under his name, and there were hundreds of celebrities in it. Celeste was one of them. Issa Ivy was the most popular and top-notch member of the Dream Angel group, and it would make people jealous. Harry thought about it and started to make some calls. He first quietly went to Michaela's room and listened for a while. He realized that she was asleep. He quietly walked away and went to the pavilion in the courtyard of the villa. He started to call people. Hello, Tammy, what are you doing? Harry called Tammy first. Hi, Harry, how long has it been? I figured you lost my number. Tammy was venting her anger on the phone. Harry could only smile and wait for her to finish speaking. Star Moon Entertainment was growing steadily and allowed its individual artists to expand their own careers however they wanted. Apart from the few movies that Harry had been paying attention to previously, Harry wasn't involved in the company much anymore. He left all of them for Chelsea to handle. There were singers, actors, and a variety of artists who were going to take on contracts and perform. All of them had developed very well. Harry didn't see a need to get involved. He was afraid he might ruin their good track record. He was also trying to avoid some of the girls in the company. On the night of Harry's birthday, his supposed friends had drugged him and he wasn't too happy about it. That night is like a shadow in Harry's heart, and he couldn't help but hide from them. But now, he needed their help. What? A celebration event or a high school event? Why should I go? I'm not going, Tammy said angrily. Please, it's for my sister. I want to make her happy and you'd be really helping me out, Harry begged. Then tell me, besides begging me, who else have you called? Tammy asked. Harry's back started to sweat. No one. You're the first. Tammy gritted her teeth. Are you still there? Please help me. It'd mean a lot to me, Harry said helplessly. Are you going to call anyone else? Tammy said. Harry wiped his sweat. I figured the whole team would come. Tammy snorted angrily. Harry immediately said, but I promise I wanted to only call you. I had no intention of calling anyone else on your team. Tammy then became happy. That's more like it. What time do you want? I'll get my manager to arrange the date. Next Sunday, Harry said. Okay, I got it. Remember to come and pick me up. Tammy hung up the phone right after she finished speaking. Harry wiped the sweat off his forehead and thought that he was lucky. He didn't even get through to the others. Only Tammy answered. Harry hated dancing around his friends, especially when things got awkward. He didn't want them to think he didn't care, but he couldn't help what happened, and then he just got distracted. Now he was juggling the emotions of a dozen women, and Harry never wanted to be the bad guy. But the problem was that there were too many of them. There was always the chance that he would upset some of them regardless of what he did. He was their boss, but he hated the idea of controlling people. They were his friends first and employees second. He wouldn't force them to do anything they didn't want to do. Seeing his frown, June walked over and placed her hands on Harry's shoulders and gave him a light massage. Are you troubled again? Harry didn't want to talk, so he only sighed. You are living in Florida for so long, but you don't know some of the best schools for ocean careers are in Florida. June's words woke up the person in front of her. Harry clapped his hands together. That's right. Why didn't I think of that? If you didn't remind me, I would have started building a university for Michaela. June shook her head helplessly and smiled. She thought Harry had the weirdest approaches to problems. Just to make his sister happy, he'd build an entire university just for her. Harry wasn't lying either. He was starting to think of who to call and how he would build a university. Harry didn't have enough time for this plan. Michaela was about to take the college entrance exam. It was simply impossible to build a university before she graduated. No matter how much money he had, he couldn't buy more time. Harry had given up on the idea quickly. June, inform Mr. Cross to go to Florida tomorrow to review the ocean major universities and see which one is better, Harry instructed. After saying that, he asked again. By the way, how many schools are there in Florida? June said. There are a total of 5 undergraduate schools and 10 graduate programs. Harry scratched his head. There are also undergraduate courses? Yes, most schools have general studies and bachelor's programs. Then a lot of schools offer graduate programs that focus more on specific fields. Harry nodded. Oh, I see. It's like the difference between car design and car maintenance. Yes. June couldn't help but laugh when she heard the metaphor. All right, let's not worry about the specialization. Let Mr. Cross investigate those undergraduate schools properly. Make it his top priority. All right, I'll inform him right away, June said. After June left, Harry couldn't help but take out his phone and check out the schools for himself. Harry didn't like not researching things for himself before he sent others to do it. What he found is that the programs in Florida were the best in the world. But Harry wasn't looking for the best. What he wanted was for Michaela, a school she liked. A few days passed in the blink of an eye. After Mr. Cross received Harry's order in Florida, he personally went to each school to inquire. The investigation was very detailed, and he sent a detailed report to Harry. Some of these schools have the best professors. You don't need to worry about that. You already know how great it is to live there, Cross said over the phone. Harry nodded. Michaela could live with him if she chose a university in Florida. This way, she could see him every day. Do they have any problems? Harry asked. Mr. Cross said, there are some small problems. These schools have been running for decades. A lot of their computers and classrooms are outdated. Harry shook his head. What's the problem? When Michaela has chosen a specific university, I'll just donate them some updated equipment. Okay, I'll remember that. Please do, Harry instructed. Don't worry. I guarantee that it'll be done well, Mr. Cross promised. A few more days passed. Harry was getting used to living in the mountain city. He was bored every day, trying to find ways to kill time. Michaela and Harry had been getting to know each other and had grown much closer to each other. The days passed happily. What made Harry the happiest was that he insisted on making Michaela meals every day. Michaela began to look healthier. When they first met, she was just skin and bone. Eating better and having more food per meal was making Michaela gain more weight so she didn't look like a skeleton. Harry, I think you might need to make healthier meals for me. If I keep eating like this, I'm going to get fat. Michaela stood on the scale and complained. She looked at her newly increased weight with a frown. She was a little worried that in the future she'd be fat and wouldn't be able to lose weight. Harry wasn't worried about it. What are you afraid of? What's wrong with gaining weight? Only then will you be healthy. But what if I won't be able to fit in the clothes you just gifted me? Michaela said pitifully. Harry smiled and comforted her. You don't have to worry about that. I can always buy you new clothes and gifts for you. Michaela only felt slightly relieved after hearing Harry's words, but she still reminded him. Still, just mix up the menu, please. Harry replied, all right, I'll make more vegetables and salads. Yeah, that's more like it. Thank you. Michaela smiled. Over the past few days, Michaela went home to eat lunch with Harry. She'd also come back for dinner before going back to study more. When Harry found out a lot of students were falling asleep at their desks or just not eating lunch, Harry made Michaela come home. He watched as Michaela finished eating the food that he had prepared. Harry then said, all right, exercise a little bit to digest your food, then quickly go back to your room to rest. I don't want you to be on your phone. Michaela secretly stuck out her tongue and said, I know, you are even stricter than the teachers. The teachers care about your grades, I care about your health. Harry smiled. Michaela took 2 steps towards her room and suddenly turned around. Oh, right. The school is holding the graduation celebration next week. We need to bring our family to attend it. You have to go. Oh, okay. I'm not busy that day. I think it would be fun to go, Harry said. He remembered that he had never attended a high school graduation celebration before. He asked, does the school do this every year? Michaela nodded and said, yes. Did your school not have any? Harry shook his head. When he was in high school, it was the time for him to go out and train. The high school he attended was only an ordinary school in a small county town. There had never been such a celebration. At most, he would hold a meeting in the sports field. The school leaders would talk and then it'd be over. Harry asked curiously, what's there to do in this graduation celebration? Michaela said, of course there is. It is very fun. Sometimes we even invite celebrities. Harry said in surprise, celebrities, that'll be fun. He really didn't expect that a high school celebration event would invite celebrities over. This was quite surprising. Moreover, Mountain City High School wasn't some important high school. It was just a school in the old city district. Generally speaking, whatever celebrations were held were done by the richer schools in the new district. One was that the students of good schools had a good family background and were all rich. Furthermore, the schools were also rich. Only then would they have the funds to do more interesting activities. He didn't expect that the Mountain City High School would be able to do the same. This was very impressive. Michaela, however, said, usually they're just alumni and they're happy to come back for nostalgia. Harry understood. Mountain City could be considered a first-tier city. In the past, the old city was no ordinary city. They were happy to come back and help fund the school because they enjoyed their time there. After Harry understood, he asked again, "Then do you know what kind of celebrities are invited this time?" "Oh, I'm not sure. The school didn't mention any names, but I heard a lot of students talking about it. There's one that sounded really popular, but I don't know."